Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Plans Committee on Tuesday, the 28th of October, 2025 for Charnwood Borough Council. Please could I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent to ensure the meeting is distraction-free. May I remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you are giving your consent to being filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it, and it can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for the time they speak to ensure that viewers of the live stream can hear the discussion. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Lenny, Chair of the Plans Committee, and the Plan Committee and I are Councillor Corey, who is my Vice Chair, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Haynes, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Taylor-Durant. Oh, sorry, I've missed out some. Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Smidovic, Councillor Snod, and Councillor Taylor-Durant. Yeah, sorry about that. The planning officers present this evening are Mr. Worley, who's over there, Mr. Ward, and Ms. Stone, who is already up here. Our lead officer for this evening is Mr. Upton, and our Democratic Services Officer is Ms. Dobson. I would also like to welcome Mr. Evans, our legal advisor for this evening. Thank you. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak. Within 1 minute of the time remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, Ms. Dobson. We have had a late request to speak from Mr. Richard Bates, an objector for the planning application P/25/0372 Barnard's Drive, Sileby. Are you happy to allow Mr. Bates to speak this evening? Can I have a show of hands? Thank you. All those, any against, any abstentions? I can't remember whether Margaret voted. Anyway, right, okay then. So In favour of Mr. Bates speaking? I'll let you know when it's time. Okay, item 1 is apologies. Ms. Dobson, have we received any apologies? Ooh.
We've received an apology from Councillor Infield, and Councillor Haynes will be substitute.
All over the place. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a rush with our pre-meeting. Is the committee happy to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of October 2025? Can you show your hands?
Yeah.
If you were there. Thank you. That was unanimous from the people that were actually at that meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as correct record, and I will sign them at the end of this meeting. Item 3 on the agenda is questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms. Dobson, have we received any questions?
Confirm no questions have been received.
The next item is item 4, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Ms. Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interest?
Councillor Fryer has disclosed that she's called in application P221254/2 Willow Road, Barrow-upon-Soar, and will be speaking. She will not take part in the discussions and she'll sit in the public gallery.
Thank you. Are there any other disclosures of interest members wish to make? Ooh. Councillor Smidovic.
Just that I have to leave at 5 to 8, Chair. So if we're still by that time, I'll just leave.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be fine. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I am one of the ward members for Reek Valley, which is... Thank you.
That you come to the meeting with an open mind.
I am very open-minded about...
Now, I can't remember if it's Councillor Monk.
I'm a ward councillor for item 5A for Dishley, Thorpe and Hathern. However, I come with an open mind.
Thank you. Any more comments or disclosures? Okay. So the next item is item 5, planning applications. Item 5A is number P/25/1962/2, off Such Road, Hathern. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Ms. Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. Okay, so this application site is located to the east of Hathern and covers an area of approximately 2.8 hectares, as shown on the site location plan. Zotch Road borders the application site to the northwest, and a public right-of-way runs along the northeastern boundary. An existing drainage basin and play area are located to the west of the application site, and the associated dwellings in Dobble Crescent lie to the southwest boundary. The site is beside Zotch Road, and a relatively young hedgerow runs beyond which runs the public right-of-way. The defined limits to development for Hathern as has been identified in the emerging draft local plan for approximately 56 dwellings. Planning permission was granted on this site in April 2024, following a resolution by Plans Committee in July 2023 for the erection of 56 dwellings and associated landscaping and infrastructure under planning reference P/21/1797/2. The permission was subject to a number of planning conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Work has commenced on the site, although I believe no dwellings are currently occupied. Okay, so this application seeks permission under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 as amended to amend the affordable housing provision at the site as currently approved under the full planning permission. The approved scheme proposed to deliver 40% affordable housing, which equates to 22 dwellings. This comprised a mixture of shared ownership and affordable rent. The details of the number, tenure and location of the affordable housing are shown on the approved planning layout and planning layout presentation, and both of these drawings were listed in condition 2 of the planning permission as an approved plan. I'll just take you there. So this is the approved planning layout. The full size is on your screen to the left, but just to help identify the affordable housing units, I've zoomed in the area. They're all located, or they would all be located to the southern part, and they're denoted by the coloured circles if you can make them out. There's 22 in total. Okay, so this application seeks to reduce the level of affordable housing provision at the site to 9. A table to show the approved and proposed affordable housing provision can be found in paragraph 9.1.5 of the committee report on page 18 of the agenda. But just to show that you can compare, this is the proposed planning layout as part of Section 73 application. And this shows you the 9 units proposed. To help you, this is the presentation layout in colour. So again, the proposed affordable units are denoted by the red dot. Just so you can see the comparison, I've done a plan to show the approved layout versus the proposed layout. So hopefully this will help you identify the units that will now become open market units. Okay, so these properties, the 13 units, will be so the 9 affordable units will be gifted to the council for a nominal fee of £1 per property. And once the transfer has been completed, they will be owned and managed by the council. The housing would be let to social rent to residents from the council's waiting list. The level of provision has been agreed with the council's housing development officer and was calculated by applying a subsidy for each tenure of the approved affordable housing for this site based on the typical offers from registered providers. Now, the remaining 30 affordable homes would be sold on the open market. The proposals do not alter the house type or mix. They will be the same size as approved. A revised planning layout and planning layout presentation has been submitted as shown, which incorporate the changes to the affordable housing provision. And this application proposes to vary the condition 2 by substituting the 2 previously approved planning layout drawings with the 2 planning layout drawings submitted with this application. Right. The supporting information submitted with the application sets out that the amendment is required because the applicant has been unable to enter into a sale and purchase agreement with a registered provider. Written evidence has been provided to demonstrate the applicant has taken all reasonable endeavours to enter into a sale and purchase agreement, but has been unsuccessful. Okay. In addition, by virtue of the reduction in the affordable housing at the site, this would result in inevitable increase in the number of market housing and consequential changes to the approved mix, though it should be noted that the overall housing mix for the site, when combining both the affordable homes and the market homes, would remain as approved. This is because the Section 73 application only proposes changes to the tenure rather than the size of the housing. A table to show the approved and proposed market housing provision can be found in paragraph 9.2.5 of the committee report on page 24 of the agenda. It's worth mentioning that this application only seeks changes to the affordable housing provision and subsequent changes to the market housing mix. No other changes are proposed under this Section 73 application. just here's a few photographs that I took out when I was last out on the site. As I said, the site's currently being constructed, so these are taken from the sort of periphery of the site, just to show really some of the units sort of starting to be built. The photo on your right was taken from the entrance from Zotts Road. Right, okay, so there are two key considerations in this application, and an assessment of these can be found in the committee report from pages 17 to 28 of the agenda. Since the committee report was published, the statutory consultation period for the application has expired, and no further comments have been received to the publicity, and no comments from the ward councillors or Hatham Parish Council have been received. As the consultation period has expired, as set out in the extras report that was published yesterday, the recommendation has been changed so that it is as set out here on this presentation, but it's that the recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to the provisions of the Section 106 agreement, which was dated the 22nd of March 2024 and entered into in respect of the original planning permission for the site, and the imposition of the conditions recommended in the committee report. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms Stone. We now have a first speaker, Mr Tom Dilliston, on behalf of the applicant. Are you familiar with the equipment? Yeah. You have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute is remaining, our officer will let you know.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I don't propose to take up too much of your time, as the officer report deals comprehensively with the issues. The Section 106 agreed with the local planning authority for the planning permission included a cascade mechanism for the delivery of affordable homes. This allows for changes to the type and number of affordable homes if no registered social landlord is willing to take them on. Social landlords are facing a number of issues at present which affect their ability to take on new homes. These include increases in interest rates, meaning that shared ownership is not as attractive as it once was, rents capped at below prevailing levels of inflation, a preference for sites of 100% affordable homes, allowing the social landlords more control over delivery, and a priority given to the funding of improvements to existing properties rather than the acquisition of new properties. The affordable homes on this site have been marketed since October 2024. 10 social landlords were approached, but the only one who expressed an interest withdrew from the opportunity in May 2025. Since then, we have contacted an additional social landlords as recommended by the council's housing development officer, but there's still been no interest in the properties. This application reduces the number of affordable homes from 22 to 9. All 9 would be gifted to the council. It does not change the size of the properties proposed or alter the layout of the site. Approving this application would allow the site to continue to be built, ensuring jobs for the local area and helping Charnwood deliver the homes it needs to. There is no objection from the housing development officer or planning officer, and the issues raised by local residents can be addressed by the re-discharge of conditions. As such, we hope that you will agree with the recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. So, do you wish to respond to any of those points? Miss? Oh,
No, thank you, Chair.
The committee will now consider the application as presented by the planning officer. If you would like to comment on the application, can you please raise your hand to indicate? Councillor Snart.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Just a couple of things, if I may, just through you to ask the officers. I'm just a bit concerned that I'm not sure this is a one-off or whether it's going to be something that we're going to see quite often now, and how this is going to affect our ability to reach our target for affordable housing. So if they can give us a bit of background at the moment, if the officers could. Just interested in what registered providers, I think it was mentioned 10, what would they be? Are they local? And are we likely to see this continue? I've just got one more after that, but
Through you, Chair. I believe the scope of the registered providers were provided in like with the council's housing development officer. So the applicant contacted the council's housing development officer and said, you know, could you please provide a list of your sort of known registered providers? And she did so. There is a list of the ones who were contacted in a report that's submitted with the application and referred to in the Plans Committee report. It's a report provided by Red Brick Housing Consultancy submitted to demonstrate who had been contacted and the interest. Like I said, there was 10 from the offset, and then the council's housing development officer advised a couple of extra ones to contact that were known to be within our borough, used within our borough. I mean, the list is in the report, but you know, these are ones that were recommended by the council, you know, sort of, so they're known to the council. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, all you can do really is go by the ones who are using, you know, working within our borough. Sorry, what was your second question, Councillor Snart?
it was around how long are we likely to see more of this coming forward? Is it a sort of trend, if you like? Yeah, the way that it's going. One concern I've got is that we're not going to meet our affordable targets in terms of numbers. And if this continues, what effect that will have on our ability to get that target level.
Through you, Chair. I mean, it is unknown at the moment. You know, this is the first application. And the reason cited for why RPs aren't interested is detailed in the committee report. I asked that question of the council's housing development officer to see if there was any indication of, you know, whether it was a short-term issue or potentially a more longer term. She said that the affordable housing grant pot will be announced later in the year. So I believe it's to do with the government's funding. And this may help the RPs to forecast their future business plans and spend. But at the moment, it is a case-by-case basis on the evidence submitted, depending on the scheme as well, because, you know, sometimes smaller schemes aren't, you know, interesting to RPs, and large schemes, you know, it really does depend on the scheme as well before us.
Are there any more comments from members or questions for the officer? Go on then.
Thank you, Chair. Just firstly, just a little comment to make, and then a question as well that's just occurred to me now. So firstly, it is disappointing, and it's like a bit of a hard pill to swallow when you see that we were having 22 affordable units now and you're getting 9. That is disappointing. But, you know, I appreciate the reasons why that's happening. And 9 is better than none at all. So, you know, and they're going into council ownership, which is a good thing. So my question was, take it the housing officer from Charnwood Borough Council has negotiated with the developer. We've agreed on 9 houses of a certain tenure mix. You know, they're all social rent, aren't they? And that seems to have been sort of an equitable agreement between the developer and between the council. And it's my understanding as well that it's cost neutral, as said earlier. I assume that is based, the fact that we can't get more of our was 22 or 15 social rent is based on a viability study. I would be interested to know, is that viability study, was that something provided by the applicant, or is that something that was done independently by a third party? Do we know that?
Through you, Chair. The calculations, no viability work has been submitted as part of this application. It's based on a calculation of the 22 and a subsidy to be provided based on what the cost would have been for the registered provider. So just to clarify, no viability work has been submitted, so we haven't, there's nothing, the calculations are done on a subsidy basis. It is set out in one of the paragraphs in the report, so just bear with me because it's quite complex. The council's housing development officer worked out the calculations and negotiated that with the applicant. So please bear with me a second and I'll just find that exact paragraph and then we can go through it. Okay, thank you. I've got the information. Okay, so in paragraphs 9.1.12, page 22 of the agenda, I discuss how the calculations have come about. And it's basically, it's quite a detailed paragraph. I don't want to read it out verbatim, but basically it's calculated by applying a subsidy for each tenure based on the typical offers from registered providers. So a registered provider would typically offer around 45 to 55% of the open market value for, say, rented properties based on the loan size. And for shared ownership properties, the offer is usually around 75%, again, depending on the proportion being sold. So a calculation, it was worked out that a 50% subsidy was applied for the 15 affordable rent properties or social rent properties, which equated to 7.5 dwellings to be gifted. Then for the 5 shared ownership properties that were obviously approved, a 25% subsidy was applied, so that the equivalent of 2.5 dwellings. This gave a total of 10 affordable dwellings to be gifted to the council. The offer didn't originally include a 4-bedroom property. However, the council's housing development officer continued negotiations and agreed that 9 would be gifted, but 1 should be a 4-bedroom dwelling, because obviously we need the larger affordable homes as well. So, it's quite complicated. I leave it to the technical officer to negotiate that, and that was what's been agreed.
Okay, thank you. I think that clears it up a bit. Just I could put it in my own terms. It's essentially then what's happened is there's a calculation that's worked out based on what a registered provider would have paid, and then that's the same to the developer as it would have been otherwise, essentially. And that for us on this particular situation, given that we wanted a 4-bed, is worked out at 9 properties gifted. Right, fine, thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments? Councillor Seaton.
My voice is so loud anyway. As was said, 9 is better than none. And I do understand the registered providers would have had more control if they'd have had more in the development. But the way they were spaced out would have probably impacted on that development negatively. And I consider that 9 properties in the council ownership is good. It's good and acceptable. As I say, the social provider would have had to have purchased these houses, and that's where the calculation comes in. Therefore, I would like to go with officer's recommendation that this variation be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews. Oh, well, yeah, right. Okay, so I think we need to go to the vote then. All in favour of accepting officer's recommendation?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's you now.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. To answer Councillor Snart's question, I know of at least one other development where this is exactly the same situation. So I think we might be hearing about this again in some time in the future. I just wonder whether or not, as a council, we need a policy on this, because at the moment we we're doing it as a one-off. I assume this is a one-off. But if these proposals to alter the terms and conditions of the Planning Commission, if that's repeated, do we need some guidance, some sort of policies to point us in the right direction? Thank you.
I would think that would be a different council officer in a different department to this one. Right, can we go now to item 5B, which is number P/22/1254/2, Willow Road, Barrow upon Soar. Councillor Fryer's gone. And I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you can see, the description of the application is particularly long, with some difficulty fitting it in onto the page. But I've highlighted some of the key components of the proposal. So it's a development of up to 221 dwellings, not 220, because there's a dwelling to be demolished as part of the proposal, a barn to go with the one spare dwelling, if you like, and very importantly, a one-form entry primary school. This is the third application for residential development in Barrow that the members have heard in the last couple of months. And this one contains the site of the proposed primary school, which I'll talk about in later slides. So site location, so the Willow Road, Coates Road junction that you can see. So all of those orange shapes are the housing allocations in the emerging local plan. Whole Orchard Primary School toward the south, and the site of the new planned primary school to the north. And our application site is HA48, is allocation site HA48. So the application site shaded red on this plan. You can see on the western side of the site that there is a cluster of existing buildings. So those existing buildings include a dwelling and some agricultural sheds and a livery stables, together with a menage and some outdoor spaces. A lot of the fields within the application site are subdivided into paddocks for the equestrian business that's operated from the site currently. The site falls from Willow Road from south to north. There's a sort of a fold in the topography along the site's northern boundary, and a little stream that collects the water coming off the hills on both sides, north and south. On the left-hand side of that diagram, you can see the circle, which is the point of entry proposed, vehicular entry proposed. The junction design is to be a roundabout, and you're asked to grant full permission for the junction. The yellow arrow alongside Coates Road is a pedestrian footpath link, which will connect that proposed vehicular access with the pedestrian infrastructure on Willow Road and elsewhere. So, photograph from Willow Road. The development to the right-hand side of that image, relatively recently completed by Miller Homes, included a Section 106 agreement to transfer ownership of the grass verge alongside Willow Road to the parish council ultimately. Comes to the borough council first, and then back-to-back transfer onwards to the parish council. That land transfer is underway. It's not yet completed, but it's underway and likely to be completed during the next few months. So then within this site, you might just about pick up from those photographs that the paddocks that I mentioned, the subdivision by fences for exercises of the horses that are stabled at the site. You might also pick up some of the sloping nature of the site, which falls from south to north. And again, the paddocks are a bit more visible in this diagram. Willow Road is to the right of that photograph, with the land rising from the relatively flat area in the north to Willow Road in the south of the site. The site's access currently, the farm's principal access, it has two accesses, but the principal access to the farm is currently on Coates Road. There's a bit of signage outside the farm. It's called Hillcrest Orchard Farm. But that's not the point of the new access. The new access is a bit further south, closer to the dip in the road. And the existing dwelling is just about visible through the hedge. It's sort of the orange colour that you can see through the hedge in the bottom one of those two images. So the proposed layout, the illustrative layout, is on your screen with the roundabout access that I mentioned, and the site for the new primary school to the north side of that. The bulk of the residential development is sort of hugs the southern part of the site, with the two stars in the northeastern side representing a farmhouse and barn. So the existing farmhouse and barn have to be cleared. It's acknowledged in the emerging local plan that they need to be cleared in order to make way for this allocations development. So they're proposed to be relocated where those stars are shown. The farm, the residual land within the farm is just off to the north of that pond that you can see just outside the red line. So the green field to the north and to the east of that pond is part of the retained piece of agricultural land, which would be served by the development road and the farmhouse and barn that are proposed in outline in this application. So the site layout includes quite a bit of peripheral vegetation. It has the sort of green strip, if you like, through the center of the site, which helps to deal with the topography, with the changes in level across the site, without necessarily having to have high retaining structures between dwellings. Attenuation ponds, as you would expect, are at the bottom of the hill. So the specification for the school site was agreed with the County Council's Education Authority. Fairly detailed specification, but one of the important aspects of that is that the site area should be 1.1 hectares. You'll notice that the sort of purpley area, which indicates the school site's perimeter, is a little bit distant from the northern red line, and that's because of a flood constraint. That little stream that we talked about at the bottom of the topography has a tendency to experience surface water flooding. So the shape of the school site was evolved during the consideration of this application from a more sort of square shape to this longer and slightly thinner shape. But the Education Authority have been consulted, and they're content with the shape of the site and the dimensions of the site. So key issues, the principle of development. Well, I'll run through them in turn in the following slides, and rather than read a list to you. So we've got 3 sets of local plans to consider. The first one is the extant 2004 plan. The dotted line is the limits to development defined in that plan. And as you can see, the site is outside those limits to development. So in that sense, it's contrary to the policies in the in the 2004 local plan. Barrow upon Soars neighbourhood plan. Slightly different red line or dotted line to indicate limits to development, but again, the site is just outside the limits to development. You'll be aware from other applications that policy CS1 in the core strategy provides for development adjoining the limits to development in our service centres, and Barrow upon Soar is a service centre, so a development adjoining that red dotted line or black dotted line on either of those 2 maps would be acceptable in principle in accordance with policy CS1. But then it's also included in the emerging local plan as an allocated site for housing. So that Copper fastens its principle, the principle of development is supported. Similarly, the principle of development of the primary school outside limits to development is supported by the neighbourhood plan. Policy BUS 10 in the neighbourhood plan acknowledges the need for an additional primary school around Barrow, and acknowledges that that's not going to be found within the limits to development, so it's likely to be cited outside limits to development. So even if we didn't have the emerging local plan and the allocation, the principle of development of the site would still be acceptable. Primary education is a significant factor. So the Whole Orchard School is a 3-form entry school across the 7 year groups. So it has a capacity of 630. Its numbers on roll at the minute are somewhat below that, but the projections from the Education Authority are that the numbers are going to increase, the numbers on roll are going to increase without adding the allocations that were shaded orange in the diagram that we saw earlier. So just based on other developments that have been completed over recent years, it's likely that the Whole Orchard Primary School will get to a numbers on roll number of 623 by the year 2029, which means it would have a capacity of 7. It's not a lot of tolerance. So the new primary school then would be a 1-form entry school to add 210 to that. So if you add the 210 to the 7, 217 primary school places, and the Education Authority's multiplier is 0.3. So it's 0.3 primary pupil places per dwelling. That's measured annually. It's measured against the enrollment of all of the schools within the County Council's consideration, and that's the most recent figure that they use. So the new primary school is needed. I should say as well that if you take those 217 places and divide that by the 0.3, it gets you to 723 dwellings, which is exactly the number of dwellings that are planned within the allocated sites within Barrow. So the education delivery strategy has a couple of components to it. Oh, sorry, go back a slide. A couple of components that relate to its triggering to the implementation. So the first you heard in relation to allocation sites HA 45 and 46 a couple of weeks ago is that the developer must make a payment, make their contribution toward the cost of the new school. So in those two cases, it was roughly 2 million as a contribution based on the number of dwellings proposed. In this case, that contribution would be 3.2 million for HA 48. But the second limb of the pre-commencement obligation is that none of the allocation sites in Barrow can commence until the serviced site for the primary school is transferred into the ownership of the County Council. So the approval of this application is the key to unlocking all of the allocations in Barrow. If this primary school isn't, if the land serviced site for this primary school isn't transferred, none of the housing can start. So it adds something in the planning balance, it adds some weight to the planning balance that this is key to unlocking everything else. So the access then is permission for the access is sought in full. So, pardon me, so the access position is a roundabout that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen with a new pedestrian link that takes us from the proposed access up to the existing roundabout at the junction of Coates Road and Willow Road. And then the blue dotted line that you see extends the pedestrian link southward along Coates Road to the nearest bus stop, which is some distance away. So this application will secure the extension to the footpath. It gets residents from this site to the nearest bus stop, to the nearest existing bus stop. I should also say that there are two new proposed bus stops halfway along that red dotted line, one traveling in each direction, obviously. So the pedestrian sustainability is secured. In addition to that, the development proposes to add pedestrian links through that verge that we talked about at the beginning onto Willow Road in those 3 locations that you can see with the yellow arrows. So those who attended the site visit today will have stood in the left hand of those 3 arrows, and the other 2 will be secured by Section 106 agreement. As part of the transport assessment, the Local Highways Authority required the applicant to look at the cumulative impact of all of the development coming forward in Barrow, and in particular to consider the 4 junctions that you see listed. And the conclusion was that for the first 3, The first one, of course, is the site's access itself. Then the traffic signalled junction at Barrow Bridge and the roundabout at High Street, South Street, Bridge Street. The conclusion of that transport assessment was that the junctions are within capacity. However, for the A60 junction, improvement is required. So the diagram that you see is an approved, is a plan that local highways authorities recommend that we approve, with a condition that says that the detail of the design of that junction is required before the dwellings are occupied, and the implementation of it to be on a timetable that's agreed within that detailed proposal. The farm dwelling that it talked about to be displaced, so that's the cluster of existing farm buildings, which is quite extensive. Some have permission, some have immunity from enforcement because they've been there for so long. And the dwelling, of course, is highlighted by the yellow arrow. And then the proposal is to replace that with a dwelling and a barn. This is only an outline application, so the details of the proposal are being worked on. But the sketch you can see with the two sort of L-shaped buildings interlinking with one another is the latest design concept that we have from the applicant. There has been comment on some other proposals for the dwelling within comments from members of the public, but those are not particularly relevant. We're not considering the design of the dwelling at the minute. This is just a concept of how it might work. But we have a planning condition which aims to ensure that the design of those dwellings is sympathetic to the context and sympathetic with the residential development, which will be just across the street from that proposal. The site, or one of the aspects of the other Barrow applications that you considered a couple of weeks ago, was the gypsum mining. So the permission to mine gypsum covers an enormous area. It's 34 square kilometers that it covers, and this application site is within that area which is granted permission. The existing permission has a sunset clause, if you like, so extraction has to be completed by 2042, or else the permission lapses. But permission to extract isn't open-ended; it's controlled by conditions. And in this part of the site, the site investigations, phase 2 site investigations have been undertaken, which is unusual for an outline application. So the phase 2 site investigation included borehole examination of the ground and search for gypsum, essentially. So it's an agreed position between the applicant and British Gypsum, or Saint-Gobain as they are now part of the Saint-Gobain group, that underground mining of the gypsum in this location is not viable. So if there is gypsum existent, and none was found to borehole depths of about 25 meters, if there is gypsum in this location, it's likely to be open cast mining, and the mining permission from 1980 actually doesn't allow open cast mining. So open cast mining in this location would be challenging because of the context, because of the residential context with the development approved to the south and now built, and the existing farm complex, which would sterilize much of that site from minerals development in any case. But in developing the local plan, Saint-Gobain were consulted, as were the local minerals authority, and neither objected to the site's inclusion within the allocations. So community infrastructure then was a consideration in the other Barrow applications. The Parish Council have submitted additional information in support of their request for contribution towards the cost of a community hall, and we were in a position to say that we think that the information is now SIL compliant. So the developer in this case has agreed that a contribution can be made toward the cost of the community hall. The health centre, contribution of £170,000 toward improvements to the health centre. I know that members last time asked questions about whether consideration was given to a new location or an additional health centre. I've had that conversation with the ICB since the relevant plans committee meeting, and what they say is that they've been working with the GP practice in Barrow to look at adding to the capacity of the existing practice, and they're certain that there is space to do that. The capacity increase for the entirety of the allocations in Barrow is likely to be the equivalent of 2 clinical rooms, and they've already identified how they can reconfigure the space in order to provide those 2 clinical rooms. It's not done yet, but they've looked at how they can do it, and they're content that it can be done within the existing health centre site without the need for a second site. And a smaller, more modest contribution to the libraries in Barrow. One small change to the recommendation, which is a mistake on my part. The Local Highways Authority had asked for a contribution toward a traffic regulation order, a TRO, which is about moving the speed limit signs a little bit further out to reflect the extended nature of the built form. So it's listed at page 154 of your report as one of the consultee requests, but then missed from recommendation A at 217. So I will suggest that recommendation A is amended such that that figure of £7,500 towards the traffic regulation order is added. And the recommendation then, members, is that recommendation A relates to the section 106 as normal. Recommendation B is that subject to the signing of the 106 and 33 suggested conditions, that permission is granted. Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, so in the extras report, yeah, I should refer you also to the extras report. Yeah, the Parish Council had raised an issue about the A60 junction that I mentioned in the presentation. Sorry, no, that was Burton on the Walls. Parish Council had mentioned the recommendation. We have consulted the Local Highways Authority about that, and they are content that their recommended conditions are safe, that adds to safety, and we should rely on the expertise of our Local Highways Authority. One extra on that, or one bit of colour on that, I suppose, is that I'm aware that of flood risk, particularly at Barrow Bridge, and taking together the comments from members of the public and from Local Highways Authority, it's likely that in those flooding events when Barrow Bridge is not open to traffic, that the Coates Road and this improved junction would alleviate some of that constraint that would arise in those flooded conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. We now have some speakers on this item. The first speaker is Mr. Mark Rose for the agent. Are you familiar with the equipment, Mr. Rose? You have 3 minutes in which to speak. When the final minute comes up, our officer, Ms. Hobson, will let you know.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. The application site is a proposed residential allocation in the council's soon-to-be adopted local plan, and it forms a key component of its spatial strategy. Not only will it deliver up to 220 much-needed new homes in a key service centre, it will also provide the land and some funding for the delivery of a new primary school. The new houses will be provided in a range of sizes, types and tenures, of which 30% will be affordable in line with the adopted policy. That will contribute significantly towards meeting the borough's marketed affordable housing needs and is a significant benefit of the proposed development. The new housing and primary school will be connected to the village via safe and convenient sustainable transport links that promote walking, cycling and the use of public transport. The vehicular access to the site will be provided via a new roundabout on Coates Road, which will define the entrance to the village from the north. Leicestershire County Council have considered the access arrangements and the highways impact of the development in detail and have confirmed that they have no objection. The existing farmhouse and barns will need to be relocated elsewhere within the site to facilitate the site access, but have been carefully positioned with significant landscaping to ensure that they sit comfortably within the surrounding landscape. The new houses and primary school will also benefit from an attractive green setting created by a network of green corridors that will provide usable open space for residents and active travel connections. The green space will include an equipped play area aimed at younger children and provision for older children and adults in a central focal space for people to meet and socialise. Extensive new planting in these green spaces will be provided to integrate the site into its surroundings, and together with the SUS provision, that will provide significant habitat enhancements. As well as providing the site for the new primary school, the development will also provide significant financial contributions towards the delivery of the new community hall for the parish council, local schools, sports provision and allotments, health facilities and transport facilities. In conclusion, the planning application proposals would clearly constitute a sustainable development that would result in a number of significant benefits, not least by providing much needed market and affordable housing, support for local community facilities, including the new primary school, and a substantial area of accessible and attractive public open space, including new play and recreation facilities. In that light, we support the conclusions drawn in your officer's committee report and hope that members will follow the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Our next speaker is Councillor Christine James, who is a representative of Barrow-upon-Soar Parish Council. Councillor James, do you need any help with the microphone and what have you?
Is it this one?
You have 3 minutes to speak, and when there is 1 minute remaining, Miss Dobson will let you know.
Good evening. In the emerging plan, Barrow is allocated 703 additional dwellings to be built over the next 12 years. But in reality, 800 new dwellings are expected to be granted permission within the next 2 years. The increase in population since 2011 will be approximately 4,000 people, over 70%. The cumulative effect of development at such a pace is not sustainable without improving the infrastructure. A few weeks ago, permission was granted for 265 dwellings in the village. At that meeting, some of you who know Barrow were sympathetic to the impact such a growth will have on services. You recognise the infrastructure in Barrow can no longer support the continuing increase in population. The parish council has been informed that the current doctor's surgery in the village is over capacity and that there is no opportunity to expand the current surgery or parking area. Financial contributions are not enough. People need health facilities where they live. We need a satellite health facility with parking on one of the new development sites to serve the people living there. Barrow is frequently cut off from surrounding areas because of flooding. Last year, the national alarm was sounded when there was a risk to life in the village due to flooding. People who drive through the village know the road network is chaotic. Despite what professional surveys say, Leicestershire County Council has not addressed the severe congestion in the village. Parking in the village is very limited, so people park on pavements, double yellow lines, and in the zigzags of crossing, a risk to safety. Footpaths, pavements and cycle routes need to be upgraded and provided from the new estates to the village. The bus service is infrequent and unreliable. Only school buses travel along Coates Road. The number 27 bus service, as mentioned, does not exist. Previous promises of improved bus services have not been fulfilled. The access to the train station is via a steep flight of steps and can only be used by able-bodied passengers. Until the new school is provided, there are no places in the existing school for primary children moving into the village. In addition, there are no nursery places or early years provision. Barrow Pond Saw is currently not a sustainable location for further development, and members are requested to refuse planning permission until infrastructure is able to support the increase in population. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. We have a third speaker for this item, which is Councillor Ward. Oh, I've got Councillor Ward and Councillor Fryer, is that correct? Ward Councillor, sorry, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Fryer, are you comfortable with the equipment? Yeah. You have 3 minutes in which to speak, and when there is 1 minute remaining, Miss Dobson will let you know.
Good evening. Government policy is that all development must be sustainable. Is Barrow a sustainable location for further development? Last month, 265 houses were approved at the other side of the village. Now the Plans Committee is being asked to approve another 220, so 485 in total. The infrastructure of the village is difficult to improve to accommodate all these new houses. The roads out of the village to Loughborough flood frequently, which means traffic cannot get out of the village towards Loughborough or Leicester. We see no mention of flood alleviation in the application. Barrow has been identified as a service centre. However, the services are already under stress without the extra housing. Parking in the centre of the village is very limited and cannot be extended. The health centre cannot be enlarged. Satellite surgery is absolutely necessary on one of the new planning development sites. The main shops, churches, library, cafes, etc. are over a mile walking distance from the site, and most people will drive, and there is limited parking in the village. The access to the train station is only accessible by able-bodied people due to the steep flight of stairs, no lift and no parking. It is 1.25 mile walk from the proposed development, so more cars will be parking on nearby residential streets, displacing parking for residents. There is no regular dependable bus service in the village and no direct bus service to Leicester. Only 2 buses a day travel along Coach Road, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Those buses stop only outside Humphrey Perkins School to drop and pick up students. Where there are no primary school places in the existing school, where will the children go whilst the proposed new school on the new development is being built? We want all residents in the village to feel part of the community, and we want to be able to welcome them to our village. However, the infrastructure is not there to support the healthy and social well-being of so many new residents. Barrow is in danger of losing its village identity. Should this application be approved, travel plans for construction traffic and hours of working must be put in place to minimise the effect on residents. It is important as 485 houses could be being built at the same time at both ends of the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Mr. Ward, do you want to come back on any of the points?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose a theme between the parish council and the ward councillor is that the growth of Barrow is too rapid or that it's too much. Those aren't really matters for us to discuss within an individual application. The applications that have come forward thus far are all within housing allocations that are part of the local plan. So the local plan process has considered some of those factors, including infrastructure capacity, and the policies in the emerging local plan for each of those allocations include a requirement to ensure that capacity is addressed in different respects. One of the comments was about the order in which things happen. I think that there was an acceptance, an implied acceptance within that comment, that the development shouldn't happen until the infrastructure has been improved. And to an extent, that's the proposals go part way in that direction. For example, each of the applications must pay their several million pounds in contributions toward the cost of the primary school before they can commence. So there is some regard being had toward that order in which things happen. Now, it's not possible to do things all simultaneously, of course. The development of each of these residential developments will take some time. The development of the school will take some time. But none of the development can commence until, I mentioned two of the triggers earlier. There's actually a third one. So trigger number one is that the site for the school, serviced site for the school, is transferred into the ownership of the county council. Second is that each individual developer has paid their contribution. In the case of this application, it's about £3.2 million. And the third trigger is that the combined contributions from all of the allocation sites reach a figure of 8.8 million. The county council will forward fund the last 2 million of the cost of the school. But until 8.8 million is collected from the developers on all of those allocations, nothing happens. None of them can commence. So in that regard, the sequencing of events necessarily involves a lot of the development coming together, making contributions together, but it can't happen. It can't commence until the funding's in place and the site is transferred, so that the development of the primary school happens fairly rapidly after those triggers have all been met. Another question was about what happens to the children who would attend the primary school during the construction. That's provided for in the county council's recommended obligations as well. There's a school transportation cost. They calculate it at £13 per child per day for transportation to an available place at another primary school somewhere else. Might be Sileby, it might be Loughborough. It's certainly not within 2 miles. It's certainly not within walking distance. So there is a transportation cost, and the developers, each of them, who are in the orange shaded blobs on that map, will be required to make that contribution based on the number of dwellings that are completed and the number of children in those dwellings that need to be transported to the schools. So there is a sequencing. It's not perfect, but perfection is a difficult ask. In terms of the capacity at the GP practice, you're right to say that there isn't very much capacity to extend the building, but what the ICB and the GP practice are looking at is how to reconfigure the spaces they have within the building and use spaces that are less productive to be more productive and to add these 2 clinical rooms. So I haven't seen the plans, but they've described the plans to me, that there are storage spaces, for example, that are to be replaced or to be reused as clinical rooms. And they're confident that they have the ability within the existing built envelope to add 2 clinical rooms. Pedestrian infrastructure then was mentioned as well, and it kind of links to the question about parking in the village centre. Yeah, parking is constrained. No one of these applications can deal with the village centre parking at all. But what they are all required to do, what the Local Highways Authority insisted that they all do, is to improve the pedestrian infrastructure. So whilst Coates Road has bits and pieces of footpath that don't link up from north to south, the requirement now across the various applications on Coates Road is that the footpath will be continuous on both sides of the road. Now, this application is only required to improve the footpath from its site to the bus stop, pretty much on the east side of Coates Road. And then the other applications on HA49 are going to be required to improve other stretches of the footpath, including all the way from the Humphrey Perkins School down to the to link to the other footpath on the west side of Coates Road. That's not this application, that's another application. This application is doing its bit, and each application in turn will be asked to contribute. But in total, like, all of those infrastructural concerns are recognised. They're in the local plan as requirements for each developer to address, and then in consultation with the statutory consultees and other consultees who've asked who've considered the same constraints and considered the same issues with the growth and what that means for sustainability, have asked for, in this case, something around £5 million in contributions in total from this developer. So it's a lot of growth. It's a big change to the size of the village, but all of that has been considered through the local plan process. This application tonight is only about considering the merits of this application by itself, and is it doing its bit? The consultees think that it is by making those sorts of contributions, and we've considered the request from the parish council for the contribution to the community centre, and we think that that's necessary as well, and that it satisfies the 3 SIL tests. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Would any of the councillors like to ask any questions or comment on this item? Oh, blimey. Keep your hands up. Not one. And Haynes. Thank you. Did you want to speak, Brent? So I'm going to go in the order I remember them, which was Councillor Seaton first.
Thank you. The 2 red flags for me here, one for clarification really, is the bus stop. And I had comments that it's twice a day, which is 27, and that, funnily enough, comes through my village as well, which is Thermiston. And it is, it's not very frequent at all. So a great emphasis is put on that the footpath will be extended to the bus stop, but if the bus stop's not being served by a bus, why are these being done? So could you clarify about the bus with me, please, first? Thank you.
Yeah, so there is that bus service that runs along Coates Road, and it's not very frequent, as you say. And then there's the other bus route that stops on High Street, which is a bit more frequent. And part of the connected footpath is about allowing pedestrians to walk as far as the village centre as well, so they can catch, I've forgotten the service number, but so they can catch the buses from High Street too. So the pedestrian connection all the way from top to bottom of Coates Road is necessary, and it does give you something. But Highways have also asked for 2 more bus stops just outside the site's entrance, so that infers at least that they expect there to be bus provision.
Thank you. And I wasn't aware of it wasn't mentioned, travel plan. Is there one?
Yes, there is a travel plan. Travel plan has already been submitted. Sometimes these travel plans are conditioned, but in this case, the travel plan has already been submitted. Highways have reviewed it and think that it's acceptable, and it includes delivery at certain stages throughout the development's life cycle, and the timetable is agreed with Highways as well.
Thank you. And does the travel plan match up with the other developments as well?
Well, it's not the same travel plan as the other developments. Some of the others have sort of combined or pooled resources or gone to a single transport consultant to help them prepare things and have coordinated their proposals. This one is standalone, and this one deals with getting the pedestrians from the site to the pedestrian infrastructure further south in Coates Road. So they're linking across those existing grass verges that I showed in some of the slides. So it deals with that aspect of sustainable travel. Others deal with other aspects of it.
Just a comment. I would have thought it would have been prudent that everybody got together and discussed the way forward on an entirety. But anyway, and the other red flag for me would be outside the school, the primary school. What width is that? That's a single carriageway road, I should imagine, going along there. And in an ideal life, obviously, we walk and skip and gaily gambol along to school and take our primary child there, kiss it, go back home and do the housework. But of course, life isn't like that, is it? Mothers and indeed fathers have to drop their children off to get to work as quick as possible. And I'm often gobsmacked that the amount of money we have to waste on traffic wardens that can't do anything anyway outside schools, when we could have just provided a kiss and drop, a way that parents could drop the children off and move on. And at the moment, I've not seen that anywhere here. So what is that road system going to be like when mothers, fathers, carers do drop their children off and walk them into school?
Yeah, so the access part of the development that you're being asked to consider in full tonight includes that short bit of road off the roundabout, coloured grey on the map, and the width of that road is 6.75 metres. The normal width of a residential development road is 5.5 metres, so this is deliberately wider because it's taking traffic of a different kind as well as just the residential traffic. The detail, I mentioned earlier that it's a service site that must be delivered to the county council. So the detail of what this application doesn't create a service site. A further application will be required to make this a service site. So that further application will deal with the details that take us from this roundabout, from the end of the grey shading there to the access for the primary school, and those may well include the pupil drop-off areas that you're talking about.
Well, I request and I hope that planners do in future. It would aid councillors because they're often got in touch with about parking at primary schools and how not inefficient our police are and our traffic wardens. I won't go into that, but how demanding parents are and how strongly opinionated they are that they're entitled to drop their child off there, which I can quite understand because I've had them, children. So I would like to think that planners and developers take on board that this is necessary at all schools, that parking and dropping children off should be a priority, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Smidovic.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, on page 135, where there's a little table that says open space 4.89, and then the residential area is 6.99. Is that a sort of, am I imagining it, or is there more open space than normal for this particular site where the school is?
Mr. Ward.
Or is that the norm?
No, it is more than is normally the case. Sorry, I'm trying to find the slide with the illustrative layout on it just to show you where that open space is. There we go. Yeah, so as you can see, there are 3 blue ponds in the north, which are part of that open space. There's a strip of land across the north, which is part of it. There's all the perimeter green space, and then the sort of diagonal green stripe across the middle of the site. which coincides with changes in level. So it's a useful place to have green space. So yeah, the quantum of green space is more than we would typically ask for. But it's kind of necessary to deal with some of the site's constraints in any case. Some of those are ecological, some are related to flood risk, some are related to just the topography of the site and where the ponds are going to collect the rainwater off the site.
So when you say ecological, they couldn't be built on anyway.
Yes, well, the configuration of the attenuation ponds could be a little bit different. That's a matter for detail. That's a matter for the next stage of the application. But water flows downhill, so these are all at the bottom of the hill, and it's logical that the attenuation ponds are going to be somewhere in the northern part of the site. It could be there are five shown on that layout. When we're dealing with the detailed application, there may only be 3, or there may only be 2, or there may only be 1, and it might be in a different location to those, or it might be a different shape from those, or it might be smaller than those. But those are matters of detail to be addressed later. But we have a minimum quantum of open space that's required based on the number of people who would live here, and what's before us now is more than the minimum. It's quite a bit more than the minimum areas.
Just nice to see more openness, but I was trying to weigh it up with section 11 of the NPPF, where it says that planning policies should promote effective use of land to meet housing and other needs. So I was just trying to balance that aspect. I was really surprised to see that it all depended on the school. So if the school was not approved, these 4 sites would just not even be considered. So that took me by surprise.
Yes, Chair. When considering the local plans options for where growth could be accommodated and what the necessary infrastructural requirements are to accommodate that growth, the school is absolutely key to the growth of Barrow. The section 11 that you talk about in NPPF is about effective use of land. So effective can, it's not necessarily the highest density, the most efficient. It's effective. In this case, the allocations area changed and increased during the consideration of the local plan. So the diagram that I was showing you earlier with all of the different orange-coloured blobs around Barrow is the revised version, which is larger. But even though the allocation was increased in size, in area, the quantum of development that was permitted or that was indicated as being approximate within that allocation was not changed. It was considered, but it wasn't changed because of the limitation of the school capacity. So to take us from a 1-form entry school to add to the primary school capacity to a 2-form entry school would have meant another 700 houses on top of the allocation, and that wasn't feasible, really. So everything is constrained by the capacity of primary schools. There are other constraints too, of course, ecological, topographical, flood risk, all the usual sorts of constraints. But one of them that's particularly important in this case is the capacity of primary school places.
Thank you. Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got 1 or 2 little bits, if I could. Firstly, on page 141, this is quite new to us, the Leicestershire Rutland Local Nature Recovery Strategy. I note what it says in there on 141, but I don't see where we actually refer to it. Is there any reason for that, or have I missed it?
It's something that our ecologists are using nowadays in considering the ecological components of proposals and biodiversity components of proposals, and how and whether to apply planning conditions that might address the requirements of the strategy. But the stream on biodiversity in any case, so it's a consideration. It's not always an addition. Sometimes it will be an addition to the policies that we already have. In this case, it wasn't additional. It's the strategy aims for similar things.
Can I just turn to this school now with the urban design? There's several references to it. Improved school placement on 150. Then it goes on 190 saying the school is poorly integrated. And there's several references to it about the school being in that sort of area. Is this something that we should consider when we're looking at outline, or should we make a note of it for when it comes up for matters later?
Well, amongst the conditions, Councillor Snart, condition number 3 lists a series of documents that we would like to guide the reserve matters application or later applications, and included within those is the master plan that's on the screen now. So we're asking that you approve those conditions, which will in effect it'll not fix the position of the primary school, but it should be in general accordance with this plan. The reason for the school being in that location, or reasons, are about vehicular access. The Education Authority would like the school to be as close as possible to the vehicular access, and that's what's achieved here. As far as possible, they want a level site, so much of the site that the housing is proposed to be delivered on is sloping, so it's more difficult to deliver the level site that the Education Authority would like to see. And then I talked about it being a 1-form entry, and we'd need another 700 dwellings before we could consider going to a 2-form entry. If the site were, let's say, in the middle of the southern part of that master plan and surrounded on 3 sides by built housing, then there would be no capacity to expand if further expansion was ever necessary. So having it in a peripheral location like this is I would suggest, good long-term planning, 20-25 year into the future planning.
And one thing about the actual funding for the school, is that in place in terms of we actually get a contribution from this, but we're looking for nearly 9 million. There was a table last time when we were doing the others in terms of what the contributions were. Are they in place, and are they likely to be forthcoming in terms of reaching that nearly 9 million?
Yeah, the total cost of delivery is 10.8 million. So it's 9 million to build the school and roughly 2 million to buy the site. And the site in this case is part, I mentioned that there's a 3.2 million pound contribution from this application. So part of that is the site, which will be gifted for £1, or not gifted, but be sold for £1 to LCC. So the value of that site is part of the 3.2 million. But each of the other applications in turn will have their contributions secured. The contributions are at a rate of just under £15,000 per dwelling. So the other 2 applications in Barrow that you considered a few weeks ago are underway with the 106 agreements and securing it on those. But each of the promoters on the allocations in Barrow signed up to an education delivery strategy. So they've all agreed that this is a methodology that they're comfortable with, and a figure that they're comfortable with, a per dwelling figure that they're comfortable with. There are some challenges to methodology on other applications that are not before you tonight, but those will not impact on quantum or on the quantum of money collected. The challenges are about the school capacity, but even on the applications where there is some challenge to the mechanism, to the outworking of the strategy, there's no challenge to the cost of the school or to the contributions toward the cost of the school. So if this application were to be added to the 2 that were discussed a couple of weeks ago, and probably two more, probably takes two more applications. We get to the 8.8 million figure that I mentioned, after which the County Council will forward fund the last 2 million. So we're not there yet. Even if this was resolved to be approved tonight, the pot isn't full and the school won't start. We'll need another application or two, probably two, to be granted permission before we reach the top of the pot.
Can I just say the good news in terms of the community centre and the money coming forward to that? Just for information, why wasn't there any contribution on the last two? Do we know? Probably you won't know because you weren't involved with them, but it does concern me that we've got all this development going along in Barrow, and we now come up with some for the community centre, but we didn't have it previously. And guess we're going to get some more coming forward. Can we make sure that we actually put that forward?
Yeah, so the other two applications that you mentioned were first brought to committee in late 2022, I think it was, or early 23. It was either December 22 or January 23. And at that time, the parish council hadn't prepared the supporting documentation that they submitted to this and some other live applications. I think I can't speak for the parish council, but I think that they imagined that it had gotten away from them before they had the supporting information, and then it wasn't, that supporting information wasn't tabled to those other two applications until after committee. The section 106 for those is not yet signed, so I don't know whether there is some movement on those to be had to be resolved. There may be, because the information has now been submitted to those two applications as well, the same information. But until about a month ago, the application submitted to this application wouldn't have been considered SIL compliant either. But the parish council then updated their information to address some gaps, I would say. It's not perfect. The submission is not perfect, but it goes far enough to give us the comfort that there is a reasonable expectation that it can be delivered. And of course, if it isn't delivered and it doesn't become SIL compliant, then the money goes back. It's not, but the parish council have gone a long way toward making the case compelling.
For about the next one, could we just note that in terms of going forward and how we can actually deliver this if more do come forward? The one thing that I looked at in the contributions, these are recommendations A, at the end of it on 217, talks about a linked footpath to Willow Road. And then it goes on to say the owner shall use reasonable endeavours. All the rest have actually got actual amounts of monies that are going to contribute to what they're actually coming forward with. So could you just explain to me what reasonable endeavours means, how secure it is, and what sort of monies that should be there in the recommendation A?
Thank you, Chair. The land across which those footpaths would run, you can see you can just about see the yellow stripes on the bottom of that screen to show you the locations. But that land is the subject of a section 106. It's still in the ownership of the developer of the land to the south, but is in the process of being transferred to the parish council. So the parish council and the developer have been in conversation about the possibility of delivering this, but of course the parish council can't commit to anything until it's theirs, until it's in their ownership. So that's a conversation that will continue after this application is determined one way or the other, and before the delivery of a scheme on the site. It's likely the transfer of ownership was expected to happen at the beginning of the summer. It got delayed for various reasons. that I'm not entirely certain of, but it seems as though that the transfer will happen. It's just a matter of time and resolving some outstanding issues. That could be a matter of weeks, it could be a couple of months, but it's likely to be well before this application becomes houses built.
And just finally, very briefly, when I was listening to the ward councillor, we were talking about construction traffic and the way that should be directed. Is it in there? I'm sorry that I've obviously seen it, but if it's not, could that be something that we look at?
Yes, it is. There are two recommended conditions that would cover it. The one is recommended by Highways Authority, and there's another one which is a SEMP condition, and that would include consideration of environmental impacts. If you bear with me a second, I'll tell you. I'll give you the condition numbers. Yeah, 25 is the SEMP, which includes details of working hours, minimizing dust emissions, details of routing of construction traffic is item G. This is on page 225.
Thank you, Councillor Snart. Councillor Taylor-Durrant.
Thank you, Chair. I really am just a bit curious about the Building for a Healthy Life indicators at the bottom of page 149. I noticed that under the red indicators, walking, cycling and public transport are on that list. I was just wondering if there was any more detail given as to why that was considered to be red.
Yeah, this application is still an outline. So some of the detail that was considered by the urban design officer is a bit premature for consideration within an outline application. The only aspects of this of pedestrian movement that are considered in detail are the footpaths that I mentioned that extend from the proposed roundabout to the existing roundabout and then further south. So the additional consideration which the urban design officer comments on takes us a little bit further than perhaps we ought to go with an outline application. It provides useful guidance, I hope, for the applicant when they make a further application, but it's not necessarily the level of detail that we need to consider in an outline application. I should say that there is actually another parallel application on this site. It's listed in the planning history as well. It's a hybrid planning application which seeks full permission for the 220 dwellings and outline permission for the school. Obviously, the county council will be the people who design the school at some later stage, and that application is not yet determined. It's a little while off being determined still, and actually the applicant made a revised submission on Friday, which is in the early stages of being uploaded onto the portal and reconsulted upon. So I hope, I haven't looked at it in detail yet, but I hope that those indicators or those comments that the urban design officer made are reflected then in the detailed design that's coming forward in this other application, which no doubt will be before you in a few months' time.
Thank you.
Councillor Haynes.
Thank you. Presumably, if you're generating, 210, I think it was, primary school places, you are generating an equivalent number of secondary and tertiary school places. And I have to read this and guess, but I'm assuming that they're intended to go to Humphrey Perkins and Rawlings. Yeah? Because there are contributions put in to. Has there been any analysis as to whether these schools can cope, even with the investment, with the increased capacity? You're talking about one or slightly more than one form entry for the secondary school. That's not an inconsiderable increase. It's quite a lot of building work unless you're going to stick mobiles on the playing fields. And if you, however you do it, it's taking up room on existing school facilities. Does that mean reduction of playing fields, things like that? And you know, big is not necessarily beautiful where schools go. So have we considered the possible detrimental impact on the education of students in those schools because of the size and the increase and loss of potential loss of facilities? Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, we rely on our expert consultees in these matters, the Education Authority, and the Education Authority have given us a lot of detail about the capacity of the primary school, a bit less detail about the capacity of the secondary schools, but we know that they have considered it within their consultation response to us, which is on the public portal. It's entitled Developer Contributions. They include a table which looks at the capacity of each of the schools that they are directing funding toward in the 106 contributions. So we must presume then that they have looked at the capacity of Humphrey Perkins School and considered that it has spare capacity within which to invest £650,000. And I don't know what form that takes, whether it is temporary classrooms or whether it's within the existing built footprint. I don't know. But that's within the gift of the Education Authority, and they look at capacity. You know, they did look at the capacity we had longer conversations with them about primary school capacity because that was so constrained, and we needed to find this other solution, which is a new school. They don't consider that a new school is necessary for the secondary education, nor that busing to a school elsewhere is necessary for secondary education. They do for SEND education, but that's again, that's another aspect of their expertise that we rely on.
Councillor Matthews.
Hi, yeah. Much of what I did want to ask has already been asked by Councillor Seaton, who stole my thunder just a little bit. But there's a couple of points that I wanted to make. Just first point, the car park for the school. All we've got is just car park for the school. How big is it going to be? Is it, in other words, is it going to be big enough to accommodate every staff member? So what we don't want is 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock, cars parked outside people's houses, parked on the main coach road, which would be a bit of an inconvenience to a lot of people and to the people who are probably working in the school. Also, as well, with regards to the roundabout and the access on the coach road, we've talked a lot about well, a lot of things about it really, but I think one of the things we haven't talked about is safe crossing points. Is there any plans for any safe crossing points, pelican crossings, zebra crossings, and so forth? Any traffic calming measures, which I think is quite vital on a road like this, really. I wouldn't be too concerned if the school was positioned at the back of the estate, but it's not. It's positioned right on the front, so I think that the main road could be a potential hazard to, as Councillor Seaton said, we don't live in an ideal world. Parents tend to be up the grass verges and all sorts. Anyone who lives around a primary school will know this. And also as well, we heard from the speakers regarding the open spaces, slightly larger than usual, and that there'd be areas dedicated to both younger and older children. But we haven't had any background on exactly what that would be. Are we just talking playgrounds that we see all the time, or are we talking something a bit more interesting for the kids to keep them busy? And also as well, just listening again from the public gallery, I've got a great deal of sympathy with the parish council. I've said this before and I've said it again with Barrow. Barrow does seem to be the hub for development. It is struggling, and it will, with the more we keep dropping houses here, the more difficult it's going to be for the people of Barrow. And I'm not just talking about the people who already live there, but the people who probably buy these houses with good intentions and think, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Yeah, there's a lot to get through there.
Okay, well, if I start with the primary school, so the Education Authority provided a very detailed specification for their requirements, and the specification doesn't include the detail of how the school is designed, because they have a template for school design. But part of that specification is the site area, and they wanted 1.1 hectares. They don't really mind what the shape is, whether it's long and thin or square or whatever, but within that 1.1 hectares, they'll have provided for staff parking. They won't have provided for parents and drop-off parking at all. That has to come from elsewhere. But because of the change, the elongation of the school site is kind of accidental. It arises from the revised Environment Agency flood maps, which mean that it has to squash down a bit from the northern boundary to avoid the flood risk. But that elongated shape probably creates, well, it does create a long frontage to the internal site road. So because the access is going to be from that internal site road, I would expect that the drop-offs and the kind of verge parking type of thing that you're talking about is likely to be within the site layout on the northern side of the road where there isn't any housing. So if you look at that layout, and again, this is only conceptual at this stage, it's an outline application, but this would be a conditioned plan to be the layout to be in general accordance with this plan. But if you look along the northern side of that side road, you go a long way before you hit the first block of housing. So there is provision, or well, not provision for, but there is space for a lot of roadside parking on a road that's already 6.75 meters wide instead of the normal 5.5 meters. So some of this may be accidental, some of it may be planned, I don't know, but the 6.75 meter road is approved, or would be approved. It's approved by Highways as the standard that they accept. The location of the school is approved by the Education Authority, and the detailing of where the access goes and where drop-off parking goes will be matters for the next phase. Then I suppose going back to the development of Barrow more broadly, these are matters for the local plan examination, and it's now at an advanced stage and likely to be adopted in the next couple of months. And this is not the forum to re-litigate all the arguments about where growth should go. It's more or less resolved or settled now. Well, it's not settled until the ink's dry on the final document, of course, but its adoption is going to come back to the committee at some stage in the not too distant future, and you'll be asked to endorse it again. It's been endorsed a couple of times, I think, so far in its progression. And all of these matters about where the growth goes will be resolved in that process, not this one. Is that everything? Oh yes, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So again, this is not a detailed application. You see that there are a couple of green stars on that layout. One to the sort of top right, and one of them more or less in the middle of the housing. So those are the two indicative locations for the play areas. You don't have the luxury of having seen the hybrid applications proposals yet. I've seen those, or at least I've seen the last iteration. I haven't looked at the stuff that was submitted on Friday yet. But the proposals are imaginative. They are a bit different from a lot of the stuff you've seen. Part of that's in response to the sloping site that I mentioned, and how they've sort of dealt with the terraced areas to create these more interesting areas for younger people to sit and play is maybe the wrong word, but they're very different in character. The young person's play area and the locally equipped play area, they're very different in character, and they do address different needs. So I think the applicant is moving in the right direction, at least with what I've seen so far, and I hope that what was submitted last week is an improvement again upon that.
Are there any more comments from members? Oh, Councillor Corey Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a lot of what I was already thinking has been discussed in quite some detail. So it's just an observation more than anything, especially with, given where we're at with it. But yeah, I think when people say Barrow to me, I do always think infrastructure. And it's, you know, it's a concern that's always brought up in terms of these applications. With that in mind, I'm glad to see that there is a school for this application, because you know, I've sat here on occasions before and thought, where is the school? And this one has one, so that's great. My specific interest in regard to infrastructure is that of the road, and I understand the conversation we've already had, that trip generation is kind of a done deal and is all considered in this report, and that's it. There's nothing further to be done on it, and that on the advice of County Highways, that is satisfied, albeit with some traffic lights further up the road, etc. I would just like to make a comment or note, just to say, like, was the trip generation studies, were they done at the right sort of, what kind of times a day? Like, was it at school hours? Because we're going to have a primary school here on Coates Road, and then we've also further up Coates Road got the secondary school. So mornings and afternoons, pickups, drop-offs, buses, it's going to be busy. And the top end of Coates Road going into Barrow can already be quite busy. You can end up waiting on Coates Road a long time. People turning right at the Three Crowns pub it gets very, very busy. Likewise, further down the road at the junction where we're getting the lights is really busy. So time to the day is something that I'm not sure County always factor in to their calculations as much as members of this committee would perhaps like them to. And flooding, when, as council or the parish council mentioned, when there's flooding in the general area, not necessarily just Barrow, but further down Sileby, all of that floodplain area, the traffic going through Barrow does increase significantly, and it's noticeable on a day-to-day basis. If it's rained, you should definitely leave a lot earlier than you would if it's not raining. So I don't know how much that factor has been included in the trip generation study. Like I say, County saying they're happy with it. We've got it in front of us now. It's too late to do anything about that. But I would just be interested to know if we're aware of what consideration has been given to those two factors, the time of the day and desert flooding.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Yeah, I can't give you the precise times of day that were used for the studies, but a lot of the studies are theoretical anyway, because they're projecting ahead to what the conditions will be like with all of this growth added. The Highways Authority kind of dealt with the applications to the north and west of Barrow separately from those to the east. Obviously, they're accessing the road network at different places, the primary road network at different places. But the applications on HA48 and HA49 on that screen, there are 4 applications in total. Well, 5, and 2 of them on this side, 3 on HA49. They had all submitted separate transport assessments at a time. Then, as the Highways Authority put them through the mill a little bit on, have you included this? Have you factored in that? Have you looked at the cumulative impact of all of these things coming at the same time? The assessments were repeated and added to multiple times before we've got to the position where the Highways Authority said that they are content that everything has been modelled and everything has been thought of. Even after all of that, in response to some of the comments from the ward member and from the parish council and from members of the public, I went back to the Highways Authority and said, what if Barrow Bridge is inaccessible because of the floods? Have you considered that? And they said that they had. And part of the rationale for the improvements to the A60 junction, were that provided an alternative means of access and entry to Loughborough from Barrow and on occasions when the bridge is closed.
Any more comments? Councillor Seaton.
Thank you. Well, the time has come, the one was said. It has been passed. It's going to be passed, hopefully, on our local plan. There are questions about the infrastructure, no doubt, on this, and that is not in our gift at the moment to discuss. So what is in our gift to discuss at the moment and possible to reject or approve of an application? There is nothing that I've seen that would leave us a way open to reject the application. A school, as you've said, Corey, is something that probably smaller developments like this we don't get, and it's not sort of until after the developments have happened you think, oh my God, where are the children going to go to school? So with all things considered, I would like to put forward officers' recommendation that this application, outline application, be passed. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Seaton. Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Seaton and everything else she said. Unfortunately, there's no planning reasons as to deny this application. Unfortunately, there's no planning policy called common sense anymore. And I have a feeling that we're going to hear the same arguments on the next two applications that are upcoming. Therefore, I'd like to second Councillor Seaton's proposal. We go with officers' recommendations.
Can I just confirm with you, Councillor Seaton, that you're proposing we accept officer's recommendation?
Yes, and not unfortunately. It is something that we approved the local plan on several occasions, and we accepted the local plan and the designated areas of housing. So there are no grounds to change the application. I'm just pleased that we've got a school on this application, and the consideration, if it was flooding in the middle another way in Barrow and Soar, I'm glad that there's been a consideration for using a different route out of there. So yeah, so I'm with officers' recommendations.
Yes, Chair, if I could just help for a short while. Yes, it's just the one amendment that during the presentation, I know we responded to a lot of questions and Mr Ward dealt very well in responding. It's just picking up the point about the amendment to recommendation A regarding the traffic regulation order and provisions for that. So the officer's recommendation is published plus that amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Are you happy to include that amendment in your proposal?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Councillor Monk, are you happy to second that amendment in the proposal? Right, I'll bring it to the vote. All those in favour of accepting officer's recommendation and the amendment?
1, 2, 3. It's unanimous.
It's 12, isn't it?
12, yes.
Yeah. Because Hillary's down 10. Thank you all.
Can I just confirm that that was passed 12 votes, it was unanimous?
Are you all happy to proceed, or would you like a 5-minute adjournment?
5 minutes.
Shall we carry on with the agenda then, members? We're now on to item 5C. Ooh. I beg your pardon, we'll hang on for a few more minutes. Okay, so shall we proceed with the item number 5C on the agenda, which is application number P/25/0013/2, Humble Lane, Cossington. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Mr. Worley.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Yeah, as the slide says there, this is an application for reserve matters for a site that received outline planning permission a couple of years ago, basically. And before I go into any form of presentation, it's probably just worth dwelling for a moment to remind ourselves what reserve matters means, because and there's two sides to this. Firstly, those things that are already settled by the approval of outline planning permission, they can't be revisited tonight. So in this case, this is for the quantum of 130 houses. We've already granted that, and it's for a point of access onto Main Street, which unfortunately, and I know it's a matter of much contention, includes the removal of the memorial tree on that corner. For those of us on a site visit today, that's exactly where we parked today, by the way. So I've got those demonstrated here. That access, that's fixed now, and as I say, we can't go back and revisit it now. Reserve matters are, and it's defined by law, in this case, minus access, because of what I've just described, is the appearance, landscaping, layout, and scale of the scheme. So, continuing on this theme, there's a development like this brings to the table a whole host of other issues: drainage, biodiversity net gain, in this case, what's going on about the school expansion, and so on and so on. But they're all dealt with in a separate place, either through working through that 106 requirements or discharging those conditions. And we are left with just those 4 headings that I read out. So we can't stray into these other areas there for another day. They might well come back to us, but not tonight. The other thing that I should say about this particular application of reserve matters is that quite a lot of information was handed down. Requirements were handed down by the outline permission. It said, your reserve matters must do X, Y, and Z. And I'll just dwell on those for a moment as well. So this is quite a useful diagram. So one of the main things that the outline permission said is that you must adhere to the illustrative layout, which is what I'm showing on the left-hand side of the screen. And what you see on the right-hand side of the screen is how this scheme has been designed, and it's evolved through several iterations to this final version that's before you tonight. And I hope you agree with me that that's a pretty darn close representation of what they're asked to do, or told to do. So that's the first tick in the box. A second was about design. And there was a requirement in the outline that the design reflected architectural features and embellishments that you find in Cossington. the exact words used where it should be of Cossington. And the reason I'm showing you this slide, hopefully you understand it's a sample, there's tens, if not hundreds of pages of this stuff in the application documentation, is to show how that challenge has been picked up by the developers. So what you see here in terms of like on the top left, those window treatments and the canopy over the porch in the middle on the top row, and the render with the fake dormer with the little brick feature in it, and brick embellishments on bottom left, and so on and so on. If you go through the documents cover to cover, there's an explanation that says where these are coming from, and that's presented to us in terms of real life examples that you can find in Cossington. So the case is made that we've picked up and been informed by stuff that really exists, and that's why the proposed scheme has a resonance, if not a duplication, but a resonance with Cossington's architecture. Cossington, of course, being very mixed itself, so quite a challenge to get through there. I think there's a castle-like building in Main Street, and haven't emulated that one, but in terms of some of these finer details, you can see examples there. So the application comes with landscaping. The headline I would say about landscaping is that the, again, requirements handed down by outline is expressed as amount of hectares for various types are exceeded in this case. Main reason for that is that northern edge is, well, firstly quite wet. It's where it's vulnerable to flooding, and secondly set aside for drainage infrastructure. But it can double up as usable open space. If you really can focus on the plans, you'll see like pathways running through it and things like that. So that's a large contribution as to how they're achieving a surplus beyond requirements. And also right around the edge, you'll see that the buildings and even the gardens are set away from the site's boundaries. So that all adds up to be quite a contribution as well as adhering to the plan I showed you earlier about matching the illustrative layout. The extract on the right, I've purposely put there. I wish I could have got it even larger actually, because one of the things that came out quite late in the day is that the Highways Authority, in their capacity of dealing with rights of way, were unhappy about how the right of way running down the west side of the site, again, for those of you that were with us this afternoon, the one we walked along, how that was treated in terms of being bound on either side by hedges or fences or whatever. But they did concede that they could tolerate it where the school land is going to be, it's where the school's going to be expanded, and that's the yellowish shading. And they did concede that where it abuts people's gardens, there will be need to some kind of barrier garden fence more often than not. So what you've got, raising your head, what you've got in the recommendation, the condition that says you can keep those bits but strike out all the rest basically. And there's quite a wordy condition that draws back the extent of boundary treatment along the footpath so that it lands where highways require it. Housing mix, always difficult for us on these evenings. Right, that's the housing mix on this case. As we so often debate, it's tilted a little bit too far to the larger house types than our local plan requires, but there's a key difference here, and at the risk of going off piece, in the next application we get something similar as well, which is that we're not entirely, well, we're barely, in fact, in the hands of our local plan for housing mix policies in Cossington. And that's because there's a more recent neighbourhood plan that addresses housing mix, and it is a whole lot less demanding than our local plan was. It doesn't specify these percentages and say you need to stick to them. It's rather more loosely worded and nuanced than that. The full text is in the report. The policy references are H3 and H4 of the neighbourhood plan, and you'll see from there that it offers greater latitude than probably all of the cases where we've debated in here and ended up scratching our heads a little. So I should say the most important bit about housing mix is it complies with those policies as well, those most recent policies. Here's an illustration of it. The other reason I've put this plan on is that comments have been received about the clustering of affordables. So the affordables are the yellowish properties on this plan, and the requirement is that they are in groups of not more than 10. And a concern has been raised about the area towards the right there. So from an aerial view, it looks like there's very much a grouping there that exceeds 10, doesn't there? But the reality is they're in separate cul-de-sacs, so you would never experience them all on one route or journey. You'd be branching off in different directions rather than entering some kind of zone that suddenly has a different character or anything like that. So the key issues for this application, is, apologies for labouring the point, is adhering to the requirements of the outline planning permission. We believe it does that. Design and layout quality, you will have noted, so there's no point me trying to fudge it, that the Urban Design Advisor has identified that there's scope for improvement on this site. There have been improvements, but I think he would say there's room for more. But our job, your job, is to determine what we've got. And our view on that is that although there probably is scope for improvement, there probably is for every application we see, if we're honest, isn't there? We think this is of an adequate high standard to be accepted, and that's behind our recommendation of approval. The provision of open space, as I say, doing more than what was asked for. The affordable housing, the right tenures in the right mix, and the clustering acceptable based on its kind of geography, so to speak. The market housing mix, again, as I said, okay in this location because it has the influence of the neighbourhood plan at play, which we don't always have. And then biodiversity provisions. Sorry, I'm going to have to go a little bit off piste on this. So in the extras, we explained how biodiversity has come forward, and it seems to be heading in the right direction, but there were comments to be made on it from our consultees before we could conclude it. Those comments arrived yesterday afternoon, and they say the detailed calculations are not quite right. They don't say they're way off. They say they're not quite right. So 2 points arise from this. Firstly, it's travelling in the right direction. And secondly, it's not a matter for tonight anyway. So like I said right at the beginning, different components of the development are dealt with in different ways in different places, so to speak. And for biodiversity on this site, it's a requirement under the Section 106 rather than the reserve matters. And therefore, the fact that it's not quite concluded yet, I think we're probably one step away from concluding it. But the fact that we haven't quite managed that yet doesn't need to stand in the way of you considering reserve matters. You're free to proceed and reach your conclusions. It's safeguarded because no development can happen until BNG is resolved. But as I say, it doesn't need to interfere with reserve matters. So the conclusion, again, is that we believe the application picks up and runs with the commitments, the impositions from the outline and the Section 106. It's a good articulation, accurate and good articulation of that outline planning permission, and that these other issues remain and will be dealt with separately under their sort of separate regimes, as it were, conditions, 106 discharge, and so on. And on that basis, we recommend approval of these reserve matters with the conditions as listed. If I can just draw attention to the final four conditions in the recommendation. That's again the urban designer asking us to up our game by imposing some really quite detailed points on the finer details of design, which the applicant has accepted. So we're not falling out on that point, but it will have the effect of making improvements. So sort of welcome additions to have. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. We have 3 speakers on this item. The first one is Mrs. Penny Weston Webb, who is an objector. Mrs. Weston Webb, do you require any help with the equipment that you need to use? Okay, you have 3 minutes to speak, and when you've got 1 minute remaining, our officer, Miss Dobson, will let you know.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee and officers. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Cossington Parish Council. We fully recognise that outline permission has been granted. However, this Reserved Matters application must now be tested against the Cossington Neighbourhood Plan, which was adopted in 2023 following extensive public consultation and taxpayers' investment. It carries full legal weight and must not be sidelined. We have several serious concerns. Firstly, the affordable housing is not tenure blind as required by policy H4. All affordable homes are grouped together of a single type and not available on the open market. This clearly breaches the plan's intent for integrated mixed communities. Secondly, on design and sustainability, the scheme fails to reflect the character of our village. Gas boilers and vague EV charging details fall far short of policy H6/6E, which calls for renewable technologies and high energy standards. Thirdly, the drainage strategy merely maintains existing runoff rates. Despite repeated village flooding and national policy that encourages improvement, the drainage plan was even withdrawn due to being insufficient. This is not good enough. Fourth, the removal of the Churchill Memorial Oak contradicts our neighbourhood plan's protection of the notable trees under the policy ENV4. The community's clear wish was for its preservation. And finally, the emergency access bollards remain a critical concern. No details are provided on who will manage them, an unacceptable omission given the flood risks and safety implications. Madam Chairman, this application does not align with our neighbourhood plan, a plan made with local support at public cost to ensure development respects the identity, safety and sustainability of our village. We urge you not to approve the reserved matters as submitted and to insist on revise that inspect the policies the community voted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Amy Gilliver, who is the applicant, or for the applicant. Are you okay with the procedure? That you've got 3 minutes to speak, and then when there's 1 minute remaining, Miss Dobson will let you know.
Good evening, members. My name is Amy Gilliver, and I am the Senior Planning Manager for Bellway Homes East Midlands, and the applicant for this proposal. I am here to speak in strong support of our Reserved Matters application for the erection of 130 new homes and associated infrastructure off Main Street, Cossington. As you know, the principle of development is already established through the outline planning permission. This application focuses on the details of layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, with the vehicular access into the site previously approved. This scheme is critical for housing supply, delivering 130 dwellings, including a significant 40% affordable housing or 52 homes, across a broad mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced properties. This site mix also includes 20 dedicated bungalows to meet diverse community needs, and it is in accordance with the neighbourhood plan policies H3 and H4. We are also proud to confirm two major community benefits. Cossington Primary School, we are providing 0.6 hectares of land for their future expansion at no additional cost to the school. And we are also retaining Polly Pegg's Bridle Way. This was a key local and historical feature on an existing route, secured with a sustainable landscape corridor following extensive discussions with the parish council. Throughout the application process, there has been significant dialogue with your officers focused on achieving positive placemaking and a high quality extension to Cossington. We have responded positively to discussions and consultee comments, implementing a number of changes to the site design, including expansion to the proposed landscaping and refinements to plot orientation. This collaborative approach has resulted in a clear internal street hierarchy and a design standard that has been positively recognised within the committee report. This proposal is robust and fully compliant with technical requirements. For example, the public open space, we are delivering a substantial 400% over provision of public open space compared to the required standards. All 130 plots will be designed to the latest building regulations, including dedicated EV charging points and PV panels, significantly increasing the site's sustainability value. There are no adverse impacts, and we can confirm there are no objections from statutory consultees regarding heritage, highway safety or residential amenity. Finally, I can confirm that Bellway Homes is confident that we can satisfy all remaining planning conditions attached to the committee report, including those specific to design matters. This commitment to compliance should reassure you all that a high-quality design will be delivered on site, fully in line with the positive conclusions set out in the committee report. Accordingly, I respectfully request that members support the officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Gilliver. Our third speaker on this item is the Ward Councillor, Councillor Woodward. Are you okay with the microphone? You've got 3 minutes to speak. When you have 1 minute remaining, Ms Dobson will let you know. Thank you.
Chair, committee members, officers, I represent common concerns of residents and will cover design, scale, landscaping and a Cossington context. Section 12 of the National Planning Policy Frameworks states planning decisions should ensure developments function well and add to overall quality of the area, sympathetic to the landscape of the area, and the local plan states that they should respond to local distinctiveness. The NPPF also states plans not well designed can be refused. Cossington is a small village, and this is a really large increase in its homes. The view from Main Street can be improved, as the advisor notes. Cossington Parish Council has seen designs more in keeping that Bellway has produced. And whilst the officer references that it is of Cossington, we have seen the bold red brick. Opposite homes and close by homes are thatched and listed, and this strengthens a visual disconnect in the village. Alongside, we cannot ignore that Cossington is repeatedly, increasingly and significantly flooded into homes and gardens, and it is compounded by the next door development in Sileby, which outfalls into Cossington Brook. So residents feel that the lack of ambition and quality design even more sharply because of this. So in summary, whilst the design advisor notes more could be done, and that we meet just the minimum requirements, Charnwood must be more ambitious, or it risks losing the identity of Cossington, and it must request this of developers. To design with sustainable construction methods, layouts which minimise energy, the report acknowledges that more can be done. Again, this is more than disappointing. The officer recommendation does note that design improvements could have been included. However, we must aim higher, for we risk the loss of quality, loss of our identity in our villages, and this is an opportunity to expect more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Worley, do you have any comments to make?
Yes, if I may please, Chair. So if I can respond to the comments made by the parish council first, there's an important point of principle amongst them, which is that you're quite right that applications need to be considered under the relatively new, well, very new neighbourhood plan, but that doesn't extend as far as going backwards, erasing what we've done and having another go at it. So this reference, I've used this slide deliberately to do this. So she's quite correct that the neighbourhood plan says the tree is important and should be kept. But we can't take that plan that's already been moved away, have another go at it, and this time save the tree. That is the fixed position, I'm afraid. A number of the other comments harked back to what I said in introduction about different things being dealt with in different places at different times. So I would have to take issue with the claim that the details of the emergency access is a dreadful omission. It's subject of a separate condition that hasn't been submitted yet. So it's a case of not yet, not being forgotten or neglected. And probably most important of all, Councillor Woodward said it as well, the question of drainage. That's not part of tonight's submission either. That will come forward separately. It's terribly complicated. There's probably some confusion because when the application was submitted, it was part of it. But as things got more and more complex, it was taken out to be dealt with separately. Needs a lot of work with the LLFA to build up a scheme that will function and indeed meet the objectives that the speakers spoke of in terms of the flood challenge there and helping, not just meeting the minimal requirements. The final thing I'd like to say in response to the parish council is about the sustainability credentials of the site. I was going to say that I recognise that's a weak point of this application, but then Ms Gulliver spoke and described to us the offer of electric vehicle charging points and photovoltaic cells on roofs and such like. And I think if they were built in, that would change the position and all of a sudden would be compliant with that local plan, that neighbourhood plan requirement. So the way to do that, I would suggest to you, is to add another condition that requires those details to come forward, and we can check that they're sufficiently widespread to meet that policy demand. Yeah, the other speakers also spoke about various matters that, again, sorry to beat the same drum, are not part of tonight's consideration. And again, that doesn't mean they're forgotten or they've got away with it, so to speak. It means that they'll be dealt with in a different way on another day. So drainage. Councillor Woodward mentioned drainage. That's the one that's at the forefront of my mind. But for example, all of the detail of what goes on that school land, that'll come forward at some point. It's just not with us tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, how the emergency access is going to work, that's not with us tonight, but will come forward and we'll make sure those things are all dealt with thoroughly, each in turn. So with the additional thought of conditioning the sustainability credentials that Ms Gulliver referenced, I think we can achieve stronger compliance to the outline planning permission and the neighbourhood plan, and bolster our recommendation in that way.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Members of the committee, do any of you wish to make any comments or ask questions? Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, so having listened to everybody's points of view on this and listening to the presentation, I'm struggling really to see why we would not approve officers' recommendations on this. I really am. I think it's a good application. The only question mark I did have was proposed by Mr. Worley as adding the amendment for the solar panels and the EV charging and so forth, which with that as an amendment, I highly think we should move to accept officers' recommendations on this one. I don't really think there's a great deal to debate on this, if I'm brutally honest. So just to clarify, I recommend we accept officers' recommendations with the amendment for the EV charging and the panels.
Councillor Cora Losley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second that as it is. That's fine, I think. And with that addition, was it electric charging photovoltaic arrays? Is that?
Well, Bellway's representative said was solar panels. I was looking for the posh word for it. Photovoltaic cells. No, solar panels to me. And yeah, electric vehicle charging points.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, like I say, happy to second that. I did just have a few things to say with that in mind still. So again, it's good to see a contribution towards the school. I think, again, welcome that. Infrastructure is good. It is a shame about the mix and the number of 4-bed houses, as you explained in the report, but I guess it shows the value in having an up-to-date local plan, and hopefully when it does come into force, we'll be more protected with that. I just wanted to ask, we mentioned clustering of the affordable housing, and that it's acceptable, and I know we've got these bungalows coming forward as well, which we like to see. But is there any particular reason why they aren't, there's none at all in that top left-hand side quadrant? They are scattered about the other three in varying degrees, but there's none at all in that top left. Is there any particular reason for that?
I must confess I'm not aware of a reason. It's just the design options that the developers pursued. Whilst, sorry, a bit not answering your question, but it's reminded me of a point I wanted to make, that about tenure blind, just to say the design of the affordable housing, say if you take that bottom right-hand quadrant, for example, doesn't differ from the house types there, doesn't differ from the ones people will buy. That's how blind it is.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thanks for that.
Is there anyone else? Oh, Councillor Seaton.
Just want to ask something, clarification on the condition. How would that be worded? Can we enforce that? Can we say that all the houses need to? What would be the wording, please?
roughly, if I may. So something I would suggest, something on the lines of prior to commencing, everything seems to start with prior to commencing, doesn't it? You shall submit us a scheme showing the inclusion of the solar panels and the the electric vehicle charging points. And we'd expect to see a map of that order showing where they're all going to be fitted around the site. And then we can judge whether it's good enough, if there's sufficient of them and they're well enough distributed and so on.
That's what I wanted. I didn't know whether we put a limit on it, that half of them need to be or whatever. I didn't know whether we could do that or not. So, okay. So the Bellway would submit that plan. And then, yeah, is it right? Okay, Solomon there. And the other point was, I'm sure when I heard one of the speakers speak, they wanted all the affordable housing together, which was highly unusual.
Chair, I took exactly the opposite meaning to it. I took the meaning that, this is from Parish Council representative, isn't it? That grouping that I'm showing now was too concentrated, rather than that she wants it more concentrated.
I think I obviously took it the wrong way. That's it. Yeah, okay. Because I thought it was unusual the way I'd sort of interpreted it. I thought that's very unusual. And the third thing I've totally forgotten. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just going on to the responses from consultees. So we just clear these up. From the Leicestershire County Council, they talk about the enclosure of the bridleway 162, except for the short section immediately. They were not understanding what that was, I think, and it remains unclear how wide the retaining public right-of-way is. Have they been cleared up? Could I just ask?
I'll try and point you to the right parts of the report. So yeah, there's two components to this about this footpath. It's showing on that plan as well along the bottom of the site there. One is they want it a particular width, which is a 2 metre path and 2 metre verges either side. And when you zoom in on the plans, that's present. But the other thing is they want it, apart from the school land and where the houses border it, to have no enclosing features. No fence or hedge or even hedge, no nothing. And so condition 11 requires the developers to take away fencing and hedges where it's not wanted.
You wish to come back, Councillor
Please.
Snart?
I didn't want to go over. Now, when I look at the extras report, it says that about the design, notwithstanding, they consider that the scheme is acceptable in its current submitted form, I guess. But when you look at it, the urban design officer has grave concerns about it in terms of the draper, the poor building to street relationship. Will these all come out when we actually look at the actual conditions that there? I just to get a bit concerned that it seems the developer's saying that they feel it's okay, but we're actually saying it ain't okay. Can we make sure that we resolve these issues that are outlined in the design officer's page 239?
If I answer that by saying to an extent, the starting point is what I'm showing on this slide now, which is where I paused when I was doing the initial introduction. So this developer is bound by that plan, and the urban design, anyone else, may think that there's a different approach to be adopted here, but they don't have that option. And as I made the point, it's for you to judge, but as I made the point, I think they've got pretty close to it. If you scrutinise that, you can find differences, but they're minute, basically. So it's almost top marks for that. The design stuff, actual physical house design stuff, is all part of this equation, where I think it's fair to say a good fist have been made of drawing inspiration and reference from Cossington and incorporating it into the brand new houses. And this is just a selection of maybe 25 examples that's in the documentation that shows the other bits of the document show which houses they've come from. And you can sort of compare new and old and see where the sort of the line of sight between old and new. So I think that's a good effort as well. The conditions is the final group of conditions, 4 or 5 of them, are just addressing some of the, well, not just because it's important, addressing some of the finer details on this theme, really. So it delves into the use of materials on a range of plots, even details like how the chimney stacks are formed, because some have bands and bells and things like that. So asking for that to be revisited. A shift of materials so we get more slate and less brown, in essence. And some of these fine details around things like barge boards and eaves. That's what the conditions are all about. And that's all about injecting more traditional Cossington-like qualities into this new development.
Finally, on the housing mix, I think you said that the neighbourhood plan overrides the development plan, the Charlton development plan. Is that the case? And I thought the neighbourhood plan should comply with the, if you like, the other way round. So I'm not sure how about that is. So if you could explain that, I'd be grateful.
Thanks. Yeah, it's always good fun, this, isn't it? Yeah, the moving parts. So yeah, don't forget our development plan is 2015, so it's a good old age now. And this neighbour plan is last year, so it in age terms it trumps it by a mile. And I nearly quoted a bit of legislation there, but I'll save by resist the temptation. There's a bit of legislation that says where you've got policies that are in conflict with one another from the various bits of development plan, the most recent takes precedence. Because the neighbourhood plan is so new, it takes precedence. Now, the new local plan isn't ready yet, but if we're having this debate in a few months' time, we may get a different answer to this conundrum, because that may then become the most recent, and the goalposts move again. But we're here, and it's October, not February yet, so they are the goalposts as they stand tonight.
Just to confirm then that the actual neighbourhood plan overrides because it's not actually in place at the moment.
On that topic, because that's an example of the policies being in conflict with one another. On other policies, they're much more closely aligned, so you don't get this tension. You don't get pulled in 2 directions at once. But on this topic, the policy content really reads really quite differently. Neighbourhood plan is much more loosely worded and accommodating than our old core strategy.
Have you got any more comments, Councillor Snart? You okay? Does anyone else want to make? Oh,
did you mean
Councillor Seaton?
Sorry. Yes, and it came to mind when you were talking about the removal of fencing, and have the police been consulted on this at all? Is it well? It's probably not their remit, but a lot of the new developments are being plagued by off-roaders because they have sort of lovely meandering paths through for people at the moment. So I'm talking about the 2 new big developments, which is Broadnook and Thornbury. And at the moment they're being plagued by off-roaders. And because, as I say, they've got these paths going all the way through. They start on fields, come through, end out on fields as well. And it seems that the removal of fencing and making it easier and more desirable for these motorbikes to go through unrestricted, because the police obviously haven't got any hope in hell of catching them. Then I wondered whether the police have been or are ever consulted on the pathways through developments or pinch points, but the removing of the fences sort of highlighted it to me that there could be a problem in the future. Just as a comment, thank you.
The quick answer to your question is no, the police haven't been consulted, but I do take your points just looking at this layout. So that bridleway, which is now, because I put it into landscape, is now along the bottom of the slide. Keep up. That's a bridleway and it's not allowed to be obstructed. So an off-roader could use it tonight and they could use it in the future. And it's fair to say that links into the estate and there would be nothing in theory to allow that to extend into the estate. At what is now the right-hand end of this diagram, you see the emergency access area. That will have barriers. And the condition I was talking about earlier will talk about the management of that barrier, like when it's going to be opened, who's going to do it, things like that. So that's probably an obstacle in terms of like joining biking into the wider countryside. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that's a risk with all of our streets, old and new.
Any further comments before we go to the vote?
Yeah, no, sorry, Chair. Yeah, it's just going back to the point that the recommendation was with that additional condition that I think Councillor Matthews proposed. Thank you.
So all those in favour of going with officer's recommendation amended by a plan for EV charging points to be installed, all in favour? And solar panels, all in favour?
Chair, that's unanimous.
Yeah, okay then. Do you want to tell them?
Oh.
Did you not vote? I asked people to.
Any abstentions or against?
Oh, abstain. Are you all those against? Right.
The motion's passed.
Thank you. So now we're going on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5D, for application number P/25/0375/2, Barnards Drive, Sileby. Mr. Worley again.
Thank you, Chair. And before I start, I'll apologise in advance for probably a great deal of repetition because this application's almost in exactly the same place and comes from the same background, same timing as the one we've just dealt with. They could be twins. So everything I said about Cossington, about what's already been established and can't be reopened now, and I'll race forward and say, despite there again being a new local neighbourhood plan in Sileby since it was granted, applies here as well. And what they are is, as I say, apologies for repetition, what they are is a fixed point of access through Barnards Drive. Members, we didn't go to Barnards Drive today because I was trying to be clever going through the next cul-de-sac because I thought you could get in a bit into the site itself a bit easier, but it didn't turn out so well because of undergrowth. But we certainly saw enough, so apologies for that. The quantum of houses, so 228 was granted at outline stage, and this is a reserve matters for all of those 228. But what's different about this application is that rather less was handed down by the outline application. So it didn't do all the stuff about adhering to a illustrative plan and picking up design cues from, it would be Sileby in this case, obviously, and things like that. So the designers of this site had rather more of a free hand to design from something closer to a blank sheet than the guys did at Cossington, where they had all these like rules and regs to work through. That said, and one of the reasons I was very keen that we did a site visit to this one today is immediately appreciable that basically the right-hand side of that layout is on a slope, a really quite pronounced slope. The top of the site is probably 12 metres higher than the flatter section on what appears as the left-hand side on this slide. And that's why you get a configuration of this order, because that's too steep for the roads to go up in straight lines. So what they've had to do is work with the contours, and that's why you get these rather unusual loops and arcs in the road network, so that the road can achieve the necessary gradients. So unusual, and I think not especially a bad thing, because what it means, what it's resulted in is that less of these like straight lines and regularly spaced houses that all look the same in long rows. On this site, that's all broken up by both the curvature that's evolved into the layout and also the fact that it will climb the hills. So almost like terraces. So you'll get this sort of interest of stepping houses like you do in some of the towns up north, basically. So that's the layout on that one, on this one. A little bit different from the previous one in that there's no requirement to, well, certainly for a school, or to involve those swathes of open space that break the development down. But this one does nevertheless do something of that order, because you can see the sort of horizontal line flowing through. That's an existing hedgerow. Again, those of us who are with us today would have seen it, and a good number of trees in it, mature trees in it as well. And they propose to keep that hedge and puncture it only where the roads go through it. And that will have the effect of almost making the scheme two separate parts, not in terms of their identity, but in terms of appreciating and experiencing their scale. When you go as a visitor, you won't appreciate, if you're on the left-hand side, it won't feel like you've got 228 houses in front of you. It'll feel more like 150, because the other ones are the other side of the hedge. So that's quite a welcome feature and a welcome way of keeping it. Briefly on house types on this one. Similarly, if I can draw a comparison with the last example, bluntly, this site is less sensitive than the one on Cossington. We're not next to a conservation area here. We haven't got requirements to emulate or be informed by the architecture of the place. And if we did, again, those on a visit this afternoon would probably have recognised there's probably not worth much immediately next door that's worth emulating, frankly. So what we've got here is fairly middle of the road house types, but in a setting, in a location and a setting that doesn't really demand special cases. The quality of it, nevertheless, is quite good. And in comparison to what's next door, where we parked, I think when you travel through Barnard's Close and you go from the established residential area, which is typical 80s, I think, stuff, into the new development, there'll be a very notable uplift because of these house types and the incorporation of greenery. That estate has not got a single tree to its name as far as I could see today, but this will have. This has tree-lined streets and that curvature that I referred to, and the kind of focal point and open space in the middle. So, said on the last one as well, always room for improvement, but we think that this reaches an adequate standard as well. And I rather suspect we're going to have the same debate about the urban designer's comments, because he spotted lots more things that could be done. Just quickly on open space, again, like the last one, they exceed requirements by quite a margin, so that's welcome. That's the typologies plan, which demonstrates that point. But it also shows how the open space is well connected and accessible to all. So there's that bit running through the middle that I spoke about earlier, where the hedgerow is. That will be accessible by a footpath, so people travel through the site quite easily. But also, and it's a hard detail to pick out from here, the whole of the perimeter has a footpath going round it that joins an existing footpath network down by the brook, which is the left-hand side of this diagram, and sort of to places beyond. So that's a good facility and a pleasant amenity to have on a scheme like this. Housing mix again. So I don't know how it's come that we've got two that fall into the same description on one night, but Sileby neighbourhood plan is also newer than our core strategy, and also has a housing mix policy, which is also a little more generous than the strictures we've grappled with in the past. The reason I put this slide up and highlighted that third line in yellow is because I know when we've debated housing mix in the past, part of the debate has been, look, this is about housing supply overall, and shortcomings now may be made up by schemes that come forward in the future. And what's interesting here is this is an example of exactly that. So we're always lamenting insufficient 3-bedroom dwellings, but here we have someone that's giving us probably 40 3-bedroom dwellings that we wouldn't strictly need if we were sticking to local plan policies. So that's the sort of compensation, is that the right word, for the ones that have been a bit light in the past. So you can see that the whole picture comes together when you amalgamate all of these examples into the whole housing supply. Like the other application, that's a 10-year distribution on this one. There's no questions about clustering on this one. It came up on the last item, so I'll say it now. It is true to say that the neighbourhood plan has come forward and has policies about clustering, but like I said, when we're dealing with Cossington, the advent of new policy does not allow us to go back and unpick decisions that have already been made, and the clustering requirements on this site have already been made when outline was granted and baked into the 106. So and they say 10. Well, neighbourhood plan says 4, so we're stuck with 10 is the quick message I'm trying to get across there. So the key issues, this is where I really go into repeat mode. It really is like the last one. So adhering to the outline planning permission, it does that because there's less to adhere to, so a less demanding task. Design and layout quality we are satisfied with. I might add to that some of the criticisms made of retaining features as you climb the hill are understood. They're not pretty, but if we're going to grant outline permission and allocate a site that's on a slope like that, I don't know quite what you can, why we shouldn't expect to see those. They're pretty unavoidable. You saw the cross section there about just how severe the gradient is and the changing levels. Provision open space, as I mentioned, above and beyond. Levels, there's very detailed diagrams in the application pack about levels, and a lot of effort has been made to minimise the retaining structures as you go up that slope. They've come down by about 25% in the course of the application, but they simply can't be eradicated altogether because the site is so steep. Affordable housing, as I mentioned, tenure and clustering is both spot on in terms of the 106, and market housing mix operating under the neighbourhood plan is satisfactory. And then biodiversity is in exactly the same place as the last one. So it came in, it's not quite crossed the line yet because yesterday our biodiversity experts said things that there needs to be some calibration of the mathematics, which again won't change it from chalk to cheese. It will just adjust the very final figures in the outcome. So very late in the day, and we're talking last night now, we got Highways comments in on this application that we've been waiting for a good few weeks. That could have thrown us off track. But I'm very pleased to say it doesn't, because they've given it basically a clean bill of health and have just asked us to impose 2 further conditions, which are summarised as a point. That's like completely conventional stuff that we see from them on a daily basis. So that's that the parking facilities available when the houses get moved into, and that windows or doors don't overhang footpaths so they don't take your head off, basically. So the recommendation, therefore, is as written in the report, and with your permission, to add in those late arriving highways conditions as to add to the list. So that's all I would like to say at this stage. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Do any of the members want to speak or comment on this application?
Some speakers, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I've got to speak. I'm ever so sorry. I seem to be all over the place at the moment. Yes, you're quite right. We have 3 speakers. Mr. Richard Bates is our first speaker. Can you please come forward to the microphone? Do you know how to use the microphone? Okay, you've got 3 minutes to speak. When there's 1 minute left, our officer, Mrs. Dobson, will let you know.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Richard Bates, and I've been a resident of Barnards Drive for the past 18 years. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of my neighbours, a community that includes young families, working parents and retired service personnel, to express our deep concerns about this application. Setting aside for a moment the wider impact facing Salby, more traffic already on congested roads, increased flood risk, pressure on school places, oversubscribed GP surgeries, limited public transport and unbelievably poor site access, I want to focus on what it actually means for us who live on Barnards Drive. The sheer scale of this development will have a significant impact on our daily lives, particularly during the construction phase. We face years of noise, dust, vibration, congestion, and the risk of structural damage to our homes and the road itself. Once built, our quiet, close-knit street will no longer be a peaceful cul-de-sac, but be a busy through road for commuters, school traffic, and delivery vehicles. We therefore ask what mitigation measures will be put in place to protect us, the existing residents. Barnards Drive was never designed to accommodate the volume of traffic from such a large development. Without serious reconsideration, it will become unsafe and unrecognisable to those who have made it their home. We are not opposed to progress, but this proposal does not represent sustainable, well-planned growth. It's overdevelopment with poor access and is harmful to both our community and our environment. Beyond Barnards Drive, the feeling across Sowerby is clear. People are deeply concerned that yet another large development will further reduce the quality of life and erode the character of our village. On behalf of all the Barnards Drive residents, I respectfully urge the committee to refuse this application, or at very best, require a thorough re-examination of access, construction management, and the community impact before any approval is granted. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Could we have our second speaker now, Councillor Elizabeth Jones, who is a representative of Saleby Parish Council. Councillor Jones, are you okay to use the microphone? Thank you. You have 3 minutes in which to speak. When 1 minute remains, our officer, Ms Dobson, will let you know.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Although the developer has now removed the area of originally indicated for future development on the latest layout plan, it has not used this land to develop a less densely plotted area for the up to 228 dwellings given outline planning permission. Therefore, as a parish council, we find the area allocated for housing remains the same and is therefore still a more densely plotted area than is acceptable to policy G2 design of the Saleby Neighbourhood Plan, which was reviewed and made on the 15th of December 2022. The developer and its Building for a Healthy Life assessment, January 2025, states that the site would benefit from further connections, both motorised and sustainable, off-site beyond the approved access from Barnards Drive. On the latest layout plan, there is no indication that this has been explored or taken into account. As a parish council, we request that the developer uses all the land that is originally allocated for the future development to accommodate a less densely plotted site of the 228 dwellings, and would therefore wish the reserve matters to be deferred until this has been accomplished. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The third speaker on this item is Ward Councillor, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Lawrence, you have 3 minutes. When 1 minute remains, our officer, Ms Dobson, will let you know.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Firstly, can I ask members to note that many of the 40 residents' objections to this application asked that the applicant be required to undertake a fresh highways and transport assessment. Most recent assessment being in 2021, before five approved developments in Saleby had been completed and occupied. Based on traffic counts conducted by myself and Councillor Bellamy during the morning rush hour, it was clear to us that the extra traffic from the proposed development will inevitably lead to long queues on Heathcote Drive and at the Finsbury Avenue Ratcliffe Road junction at peak times. Setting that aside, my primary remaining reason for opposing the approval of this application is that the applicant's latest revised layout plan fails to utilise all the developable land on the site. It is not acceptable in my view from a planning perspective for the applicant to seek permission for a higher density of housing than is actually necessary to accommodate the 228 dwellings approved at the outline stage. My concerns are reinforced actually by the Charnwood's Urban Design Officer, who comments at the top of page 288 of the agenda pack. Detailed design concerns remain unresolved. Also by Highways in their final comments that arrived yesterday, which maintained their stance that the proposed road layout is not even adoptable from their perspective. I would contend that both of these officer reservations lead directly from the developer seeking to cram 228 dwellings into 3/4 of the land available, resulting in greater housing density than that is necessary. I would also ask members to note that in the initial layout plan drawing reference number PL 002-01, Vistry explicitly annotated part of the amenity public space at the northern end of the site as,
quote, potential future phase of development within developable area, unquote. It cannot be right that the door is left open for a further application seeking permission to build yet more dwellings. I would therefore ask the committee that the committee resolves to defer its decision on the grounds that the design fails to comply with the emerging Local Plans Design Policy DS5 and the Sarby Neighbourhood Plans Policy G2. This would allow the applicant a final chance to submit an amended layout plan with a lower housing density. If, however, members are minded to accept officer's recommendation to approve, I would respectfully ask that the committee include a planning condition in your resolution that explicitly bans the building of dwellings on the land northwest of plots 219 to 225, indicated as amenity public space on Vistry's drawing reference number PL 002-01 revision B. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Worley, do you have any responses?
Excuse me. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's a lot said there, wasn't there? If I can start with access and traffic, I have personally quite a degree of sympathy with the comments made by Councillor Lawrence and Mr. Bates before him, because I wasn't around when this outline planning permission was granted, so I was allocated the reserve matters earlier this year, and I was surprised to see a permission that channeled all of its traffic through one cul-de-sac. I don't mind admitting that, but I had to get over that quickly because that's what it did. And like we've discussed earlier tonight, we can't undo that now. Despite, I suspect Councillor Lawrence is right, that traffic conditions have deteriorated since this was granted. And if we reran them now, we may get an answer that's rather less favourable, who knows? But it wouldn't take away what's already been granted. We're still stuck with what I showed earlier. That, just as we were in Cossington with their point of access being approved at outline. So they are that is the context within which we're working. If you excuse me being blunt, whether we like it or not. The parish council made reference to policy G2 of the neighbourhood plan. Policy G2 doesn't say you must achieve certain densities or avoid certain densities. It's more in the language of being appropriate for its location and being sympathetic or reflective of development nearby, adjacent. So I've dwelt on this, excuse me, I've dealt on this slide deliberately so that you can see how the density of this development compares to the sort of rather large estate based on Heathcote Drive, which is the bit kind of underneath on this drive, so to speak. And I think you will agree with me that this is not excessively greater than that large development that we travelled through. I would go so far to say as it's broken up more, and the incorporation of more greenery will help it be an improved experience when you visit this location. The area of land that Councillor Lawrence was talking about is that it actually overspills the screen on this particular one. You can probably make it out by a meaningless, as it happens, black line that's at the very top of the slide, pretty much in the centre. As he said, when the application was first submitted, this was labelled as possible future development, but was taken out. Doesn't really make any difference because anyone can apply for anything, anytime they want anyway, and they haven't. That would be for another day, should that occur. But the suggestion that we should ask for the site to be reconfigured so that it steps into that area and becomes less dense is, well, I would say not necessarily based on the policy that I've just spoken about, which talks about being similar to your neighbours, and B, would probably, I'm trying to do maths quickly in my head, would probably result in an under provision of open space, because whilst they're providing more than required on this site, it's not by a gigantic amount. So if we were to lose that large rectangle, it probably would tip the balance and become too little. So I think a lot of caution is required with some of these concepts.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Does anyone wish to make any comments now? Councillor Snart, anyone else?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just a bit confused actually after hearing the ward councillor. And this is the highway bit, and it in the papers, page 287, the LHA considers the internal layout does not fully accord, and the site is therefore not suitable for adoption at the current proposal. Is that still the case?
No, that's what I referred to. I'll go to the right place. That always helps. At the end of my representation. So as you can see, highways, that's a response to the previous iteration of this layout. The final one, the one I've been displaying tonight, was submitted early September, and we had to wait until last night for highways to respond. And they're not saying that anymore. They're saying, sorry, I forget who said it, but they're saying there's some faults that need rectifying to achieve adopted standards, but they're not saying that it's unacceptable as a road layout. And they are asking for 2 extra conditions, which you're free to incorporate if that's the direction in which we're going.
So I'm not absolutely clear. As things change from, have they altered it in terms of the actual plan? Because it's quite clear that it says it does not accord with the an adopted, and it won't be adopted. So I don't understand in terms of the actual highways coming back and saying it's okay now.
Try and explain further with reference to a plan. So, as I say, those comments were made in relation to the previous iteration, and it was about some of these cul-de-sacs being too long for the shared surfaces in the previous iteration. If you were to put this alongside the previous iteration, you'd see differences in the length of some of the hammerheads and the extent to which they're paved as opposed to tarmac and things like that. So the plan we've got on the screen now was the developer's reaction to those criticisms, and that last night gave rise to the changed position from highways that they're okay with it now, subject to those conditions, and quite a lengthy list of comments about being fit for adoption, but yeah, that's not our business, so didn't particularly dwell on those.
Just on the density, Manager, could I just ask through you again, do we know the density of the site per hectare?
Sorry, Councillor Sart, I didn't quite hear you.
Do we know what the density of the site is by hectare, so 31 or whatever?
I bet in the documents for the application that we are told that, but I'm sorry, I can't remember it right now. It looks about, I've seen a lot of these in my time. It looks about, what you think, Jeff, about middle of the range, so I would guess around 30.
And finally, for me, it did come up, and I note that it does go through and into the site, and when construction's going, and I don't see any restrictions on times that the construction could be carried out. Is there any way we could put some timings on that so they can actually have some time to say on weekends and such that we don't actually have any construction or whatever? I just didn't see it there, but I may have missed it.
Yes, we absolutely could. We often do, don't we, in this chamber. But in this particular case, if I can refer you to paragraph 3.3 of the report, that's page 279 in my pack anyway. You'll find there that that requirement has already been imposed by the outline planning permission, and nothing we decide tonight will change that. It's a bit like we were discussing at Cosington. That's to be dealt with on a different occasion, but they won't get away with it. It needs discharging in its own right as a discharge of condition application at some point. And that includes the measure you just asked for, Councillor, along with a host of other things like controlling dust and noise and power tools and things like that.
Just wanted to make sure it was there, that was all. Thank you.
Councillor Seaton.
Thank you. I am assuming, and I might be wrong because I wasn't on this, that on the well, I don't know, sort of what southeast edge. There's a road. Is there down the side down there?
Not really. It's a private farm track that leads to that house that stands just outside the site, as opposed to a proper road.
So it isn't in our gift to be able to say the construction traffic temporarily could go through that another entrance. So that aside, I am absolutely amazed that that it got passed. Going through a cul-de-sac the development that is already there has got meandering curved roads as well. Probably that was to deal with the topography of it as well as it is here. So I am amazed that it was passed, but as you say, it is passed, and it's not in our gift to alter that. Would it be in the gift of the developer to alter it and just put an extra access point in?
They would be free to, if I can answer it that way, but there's nothing compelling them to.
I know it's a completely different thing and it's nothing to go by, but could they be requested to do that and just leave it at that? We know that they could just deny that. Just a note, saying that another access point would alleviate a problem. We've got all of that traffic going through a short cul-de-sac. So then the traffic will either go left or right. So it'll be used as rat runs, won't it? Which one is first? So I'm actually amazed. So, they can only say no, can't they? So, yeah.
Indeed, and the context, put yourself in the developer's shoes, the context that for them would be extremely high risk. Because if they were to step away from the consent they've already got and it slipped away in pursuit of a new one with several accesses, they may end up with nothing. So quite whether they're prepared to take that, I would doubt.
I thought they could just slip it in and change it and you'd just say, okay. I do live in a very weird world.
Are there any more comments? Do you want, Councillor Matthews, did you want to speak? Off you go then. Is that okay with you, councillors?
Just on we're all talking about how it got through and such, but we generally have to take what highways say in terms of their actual information and how they actually put it. So do we know when this actually was put forward as a outline planning, what was actually said from the highways? Because I can't recall it myself, but I think generally it's acceptable if the highways say that we can't go against the actual highways recommendation.
Yeah, so when it was put to highways is precisely the 9th of September. I know because I did it. The response we got yesterday used the phrase that we see often, and it says something of the, I can't quote it exactly, but it says something of the order of the development would not result in a severe, an unsafe situation or severe residual hazard, and is therefore in accordance with paragraph 115 and 116, I got that bit right, of the NPPF. Now, we see those words a lot because that's their ultimate conclusion, and then went into a narrative about adoption and then those conditions that I mentioned earlier.
Councillor Matthews.
Okay, yeah, so we've heard a lot tonight on this one about the access point and things like that, and they're things that we can do nothing about. I certainly would like my personal comments to be on the record, just listening to Mr. Bates regarding the cul-de-sac and the access. If I was him and this was my cul-de-sac, I certainly wouldn't have been as calm as he was tonight. I would have been very, very quite the opposite, shall we say. It is a bit of a rough card that they've been dealt with this, but as Mr. Worley says, there is nothing that this committee can do about it. What we can do and what we can talk about with regards to the application is, well, I can't see any reason whatsoever for not approving the application at all, what this committee can decide on and what we can debate. So kind of, I feel like with a heavy heart really that we should move to accept officers' recommendations on this application. And yeah, accept Mr. Worley's recommendation.
Any more comments? Councillor Corey Losley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Mr. Worley. The traffic assessment from 2021, obviously it's very old. I assume that's enshrined in the 2021 application. There's nothing we can do about, like other things we've discussed. We can't get an updated version of that, can we, as part of this? Okay.
Yeah, I've said in exchange with Councillor Lawrence, and yeah, it came up again tonight, that we could do a traffic survey, and heaven only knows what results it would produce, but it wouldn't take away the permission that's there. So.
With that in mind then, Chair, I'm happy to second Councillor Matthews' proposal with the addition of those two late conditions that we've had from Highways, if that's acceptable to him.
Thank you, Councillor Corey Losley.
Yeah, I just point out, yeah, with the Highways amendments, yes, I just want to clarify that with my move to accept officers' recommendations with the Highways amendments.
If there are no other comments or questions, can we proceed to the vote, please? All in favour of accepting officer's recommendation with the amendments?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
All those against?
It's two against. No, it doesn't.
No, me.
So you 4.
Against.
Against. Right. So,
Thank you. Okay then, so I've got a list, have we had, oh no, we've got no list of applications determined under delegated powers, because we only had a meeting about a week ago, didn't we? So I'd like to tell you that there's another planning meeting on the 13th of November, which is a Thursday, and I will now close the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.